See, I think but I think we are talking about the same thing because, I mean, you are a really good example. Your training and the way you train makes you a really good technical coach. And I think that's the benefit of having a good athlete who becomes a coach. They can become a really good technical coach because they lived it. You know, the female obstetrician, as you were saying, they lived it, they had their baby, they can really get you in a different way. But as you and I know, is that if that person can't connect with the person on the ground, they can't help their performance.
My name is John, and this is Please Allow Me. Today I got to chat with a sweet, sweet guy. He has a doctorate in clinical health psychology. He works with people and athletes dealing with eating disorders. He's been published in the European Journal of Immunology and was part of the famed Tufts study on the comprehensive assessment of long-term effects of reduction intake of energy, or what you and I might call fasting. He's a former Division I athlete and an aficionado on the perfect Guinness pour. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Russ Kennedy. Dr. Russ Kennedy, thanks for coming. Do you mind if I call you Russ?
Please do.
Thank you. How's it going?
It's going great. It's a gorgeous day out. I mean, at least it's not snowing. Yesterday it snowed.
It was
for Christ's sake.
Dude, that was the pits.
Oh.
What have you been doing since the COVID pandemic?
My day job is in healthcare. I work in eating disorder. I run an eating disorder clinic. And it got absolutely mobbed with COVID. You know, I mean, I think of the things that shut down, we doubled. You know?
Why? Because people are sitting at home just like eating and getting fat?
That's one thing. I think that, this is actually good because we should look at it like in a bigger picture,
right.
When you look at how people are handling COVID and things like that, is that better?
Yeah, yes, perfect.
All right. People can really do use different behaviors to kind of deal with their emotions. I'll just put it that way. So some people's behaviors are drinking these fine drinks that we're doing or smoking some fine herb or whatnot. But some other people get similar benefits from not eating or binge eating or using crazy behaviors like vomiting or something.
Well, it's also difficult because the government shut down any way to get active and stopped you from like going outside for a little while. But yet the cheese shop was open because that was definitely necessary business to be open. It's like you can't just be stuffing blue cheese down your throat and then not get on the treadmill and expect that you're going to get lean when this thing's over.
I think that definitely the cheese shop being open didn't help, but I think it's pretty complicated for a lot of people, and you'd be surprised how many people will skip a meal or like crazy binge like late at night or something.
Yeah, that's me.
Is it really?
Oh my God. I have the most, wrestlers, and people in weight class sports, we have awful body dysmorphia.
Big time.
I mean, there are days where like I'll eat and I can't even move and I feel like I'm actually going to tear an abdominal muscle.
Oh God.
And I'm like, I don't care because what's left in the takeout container tastes so good. And then I think I'll just chug a bunch of water and then it'll feel better.
Of course. And put more in there.
Yeah. And then I'll go 5 days eating like chicken breasts and spinach. And
is that penance eating? Bad boy eating? Look what you did.
Penance is after the fact. I feel like this is preemptive.
Okay.
So my chicken and broccoli is for the next week.
A lot of my sinning is preemptive though. So that doesn't matter either way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I kind of like live Monday through Friday afternoon in preparation for Friday through Sunday morning.
You'd be surprised how many people tell me this. It's interesting. I do a lot of.
Am I fucked up?
Oh yeah, but I mean for other reasons.
Yeah.
That's one of the minor ones. I'm just kidding, but there's definitely I do a lot of evaluations, and so a lot of them are on Zoom now because of the COVID. So I'll get someone and just see their face, and they'll be talking to me and stuff, and someone will talk about a binge, and I'll say, okay, well, describe your binge. Like, what does your binge look like? And I'm sure right now in your head, just like the Terminator, remember when he had like that list of things that came up in his, when I said, tell me your binge, I'm sure a bunch of things just popped up in your head of like what your binge is. And so this one guy was like talking, a lot of times people will say, okay, and at the end of a meal, sometimes I'll have a little piece of sugar.
Turn 2 down a little bit, Guido.
And what and when they talk about having a little piece of sugar, what they usually mean is like Hershey's Kiss.
Right.
Or, maybe they had a chocolate bar. So this one guy was telling me, he's like, he lists egregious amount of food. And then he's like, and then after that, I just had some sugar. And I'm like, well, when you say sugar, like, what's that mean for you? And I'm expecting Hershey's or something. And he's like, a gold medallion.
What's that?
Which is like a bag of sugar. Where he would just put a spoon in it and just sit there. And at the end, and this is after, a lot of food that you and I would just be like, man, that's a crazy amount of food. And then he just to top it off. And that's like the crack of the food world. So yeah, but you're right. Some people say the same thing. I almost feel like I stopped because of physical discomfort.
Right. Like it's, people make a joke, but it's the meal's not over when I'm full. The meal is over when I hate myself.
Brian Wansink, he's a good person to Google. He is a great researcher out of Cornell. Now, I didn't go to Cornell. Did you go to Cornell?
Not yet.
No, not yet. Okay, let me know how that goes when you start your Cornell journey. But he was there. He actually had a little bit of trouble with some academic dishonesty for like data mining and stuff like that. But he's the guy that has like a two-way mirror and then like a living room, and then he gives people food and then like watches their behaviors and shit like
Office hours are from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m.
those are office hours that I don't want to be in that room at all because of the two-way mirrors. But
so what was he doing? He was stealing people's data?
He would like data mining is almost like, well, let's just like document everything and see what we can make sense of, rather than here's our this is what we want to look for, this is how we're going to look for it, and this is what we did, and this is what we found. Instead, it was like we just took all this data and then saw what correlated.
Okay, so you had a preconceived idea of what you wanted to find, and you pulled the right data to prove what you already.
So it's kind of like exactly. So, but a lot of it is pretty legit stuff. So he's famous for a couple things. He's the guy that found that if you have a bigger bowl, you have more food than if you have a smaller bowl, you'll eat less food.
Is that the experiment where they put the hole in the bottom of the bowl? That was him.
That's Brian Wansink.
Oh, get the fuck out of here. So that
brilliant.
Brilliant. If you don't know about that was an experiment where they basically put a bowl in front of you and there was a hole underneath it. And if they kept filling it up from the bottom,
to see how long you would go,
fat motherfuckers would keep eating. I would crush that shit for days.
You like, am I in heaven?
Oh my God.
Well, the thing is that, people would go on without recognizing that I've been shoveling this stuff away and it's not going down at all. Like, it's still there. But the other one he did was great, is he paid for people's popcorn at the movies. And he gave you either large or small, but he either gave you fresh or stale. And what he found is if you were given a large one, even if it was stale, you ate more. So like, you figure if you and I had like a handful of stale, we'd be like, this is nasty, I'm not gonna have any more of this. But if I had a small stale, I would eat a certain amount. If I had a large stale, I ate way more.
Does that have anything to do with the fact that you paid more money, even if it's 50 cents for the stale, and you think like, oh, well, I paid more money, I better get my money's worth?
Damn straight.
Yeah.
Paid $5 for the small and $5.25 for the bucket.
Yeah, dude, $5.25. What's the last movie you saw? Breakfast Club? That shit's like $13.
Is it Breakfast Club? Such a good movie, man.
It is a good movie. It's a great movie. In addition to your work with eating disorders, do you do some work with athletes from time to time?
Yeah. Well, no, I was a gymnast in college. I was a gymnast in Syracuse. And then like a lot of gymnasts spent a lot of time coaching as well. And for me, coaching, this is probably a really good topic I'd love to chat with you about, because...
Let's do it.
Well, because, have you ever heard of, I think it's called the Peter Principle. Thank you, Guido, for that Google. But the Peter Principle, I believe it was Lawrence Peter, who was an economist, and I forget what, maybe here in Massachusetts, might have been Northeastern, but we'll find out from the Google machine in a second. But he had this idea that, like, you're a real good salesperson, and we're like, you're so good, we're going to make you like the regional sales manager. No, the regional sales guy. You're killing it in the regional. But then they're like, now we're going to make you manager of salespeople, and you tank. And they're like, well, the things that got you promoted were a different skill set as a salesperson, and that'll make you a manager, which is a totally different skill set.
Right.
And this is the Peter Principle. Was I right on that one too? I think it was like the Peter Principle. And he basically, I use that when I talk about people that are good athletes that become coaches. And just because you had the skill set that made you a good fighter or a good athlete doesn't necessarily mean you have the good skill set for teaching.
There's a book called The E-Myth that's like that. Pick a task, pick anything. I'm great at making leather briefcases.
Impressive.
Just because you're great at making leather briefcases doesn't mean you'll be great at running the business of making leather briefcases.
100%.
So the E is for entrepreneur. It's the entrepreneur myth. That just
that one person does all.
Oh, no, well, the myth is that just because you were good at doing the thing when you were doing it doesn't mean you're good at running the business that allows people to do the thing. So it's kind of similar to that.
Why a lot of gyms fail, I think.
That's why a shit ton of gyms fail.
We think about it, in that situation, it really is like someone who's like a good muscle head or something. And I've been going to the gym my whole life. I totally get it inside and out. Sorry, is this hitting a note?
No, I feel like sitting across from a psychologist and you talking about meatheads and stuff. I don't know who the light is on here.
little dog whistling going on right now. Meathead gym owners, and this is what it's all about today. But well, anyways, I think that I find is a problem with a lot of coaches is that I was a good, in your situation, a lot of guys who are good fighters. Yet when you put them in front of a group of guys to teach a technique, they just basically say, watch me, and then they walk around and then there are these deficit focused guys that say, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. Now, maybe in the military, that's a great idea because if that guy does this wrong, we're going to die in the foxhole or whatever. But if I'm trying to, you know who's in the dojo with us when we're in there. You got accountants and lawyers and you got people who are family people and you have everybody. So I think this idea that you come into a place where you're just going to be told what you're doing wrong and this deficit focused view of coaching, and that happens often when you have someone who is a good athlete and they don't really know how to coach. They don't really know how to interact with people in that coaching way, where they can really deliver something that gets received in a way that it makes the benefit that you want. And I think that's an issue. And you've probably had guys that come in and they have their black belt and you're like, they even probably ask you, hey, let me know if you ever want me to teach. And you're like, dude, I've seen you can't teach for shit. And no way, and stuff like that. And I think that, go ahead. You're
using two words kind of interchangeably, at least in the same sense, and I think are very different.
Go ahead.
It's worth talking about the difference between a teacher and a coach. I think those are two different things.
Give me that. Well, why don't you give me a little bit of why don't you tell me what you think would be differentiators between the two?
I think a teacher is someone who can say, here's a technique, break it down really well, and then the most people, he can disseminate he or she can disseminate the information. Thank you, 2021.
Thank you.
Disseminate the information the best to the most people. It's just relaying information. But a coach is here to get the most potential out of you. A coach is a different thing. There are great teachers in a lot of venues, but I think that a teacher lacks a certain perceptual awareness that a coach might have. For example, let's just take, I could be a doctor and I could be, what are doctors called who, preside over giving birth?
OBGYNs?
OBGYNs, sure. So I could be a male OBGYN and I can go to school and I can study all the shit I want to study about being an OBGYN.
But you can't.
And I can teach it to you. And I can even take a woman who's giving birth and I can say, here are the steps, here are the things. Yeah. I'm basically teaching you how to get through the process, but I can't really coach you because I've never squeezed a watermelon out of my vagina before. It takes someone who's been there on some level or another to actually coach you, I think. There's a piece to the puzzle that is missing when you've never done the thing you're trying to instruct on. You can be a great teacher without having done it, but I don't think you can be a great coach.
It's cool because it's in some ways, it's almost a difference between an academic and someone who's really been in the field and really participated.
Right. It's like the difference between classroom law and the difference between courtroom law.
Interesting. Or I was almost going to say a theoretical physicist and a laboratory physicist.
Or I was going to say...
it's always one step ahead.
Tons of people that teach in MBA programs have never run a business. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. I totally get it too. I used to say the smoking oncologist or... Well, remember in the 80s, everyone was an aerobics teacher in the 80s and 90s, and they weren't always the fittest people.
Right. But going back to teachers and coaches, I think that a coach, the difference between a teacher and a coach is the ability to a coach can get the most out of the least. The coach is going to tell you the things you don't want to hear. There's like a meme on fucking Instagram, I'm sure. It's like the coach is going to tell you the things you don't want to hear so that you can do the things you didn't know you could do. Whereas a teacher is just going to disseminate the information. And if you're a passive student, you may take the information and act on it, you may not. But a coach is going to do, in my opinion, a coach is going to do more to involve you in the teaching and learning process, because the student has a job to do also.
All right, so I see the distinction you're making, and I can live with that. And maybe I was using them interchangeably, and they're not. I think when I to talk about it in a bigger sense, that for coaching for me is more of an interpersonal relationship where you really do get that person. And I think one hard thing for coaches is to say one thing to 20 or 30 people and think that it's going to hit all those people the same way.
How successful were you when you were a gymnast in college?
I was Division I. I did really well. I don't know how else. I mean, we were in the top maybe like 15 each year.
What was your event?
Syracuse, high bar and rings were probably my two best ones.
So I find that I think that one of the things that helps me to coach people to whatever degree I do it is the lack of the penultimate success.
Okay.
Because I didn't have necessarily the gifts to do all the things that natural athletes could do. So I have to think more about the things that I'm doing.
See, because that's a good point. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when I think about it, it's people want to read sports site things or coaching, and they go to coaches that worked with professional teams and Olympians. And I think well, do you really think that the techniques to reach that Olympian in their mind and their psyche is the same that you're going to get on 90% of the people? It's you're not going to get that kind of mentality as often. And so sometimes when we just study them on how they work with the top 1% of our sport or whatever, I don't know if we're really getting the benefit as coaches who work with the bottom 99%. And so when you learn how to just talk to the 1%, I think you alienate a lot. And you and I, we've known each other for years in the dojo. You met me, I was already over 40, so for me, right. I was older and I came in with already a broken body, but years of other things, and we've talked about that before. But what I kind of recognize is that, jiu-jitsu I needed to make jiu-jitsu what worked for me as a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old jiu-jitsu player. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't go into, and some of the other gyms that I were at where they had kind of this one-size-fits-all way of coaching, where this is more of teaching, I guess, under the definitions we're using, where they just kind of have this doctrine that they just kind of say, and now it's go do this.
Well, there's a huge difference when someone's running a program versus when someone owns the gym and runs the program. The guy who runs the program doesn't care how many people show up because he's getting paid, $50 a class or whatever the fuck it is anyway. Yeah. So he doesn't necessarily care. I think the thing that also benefits is the ability to read people really quickly and give them what they need so that you get what you want. And the thing that I think that helped me develop that was waitering through my 20s.
Brilliant.
And waitering in high-end places where
you really got to read them well.
You got to, and you have seconds to do it, and you've got to give them the personality and the things they want so that you can get the best tip out of it. Wow. And you can read certain people, which maybe is right or wrong, and you can say, I'm not getting anything out of this anyway, so you're not really going to get a lot of my attention. I don't really care if your drink is empty, because I know that you're going to be a cheap fuck. And, it comes with years of experience in reading people and certain cues I can't quite define. But that's how you got to do it in the gym. You got 35 different groups of people on the mat. As a broken 40-year-old, as you called yourself, you need something different than the kid who's getting ready for competition. And so when I come over to your group, I can't be the same person that I am with the other group.
Exactly.
And I can do my little bit and my shtick and stuff, but in reality, the brand new 2 girls who just joined the gym last week, I can't hit them with the stick that I'm going to hit Dima with for not grabbing the lapel in the right spot, right? It's got to be different.
But he would never do that.
No, not Dima. So you got to kind of read the people and be a little bit more individual. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a psychologist.
I would. When I always tell coaches that, well, that's why, even for me, I think it's just more that, are we teaching our coaches psychology? Do if I asked a coach, or maybe even, maybe another good psychology term that you and I could discuss is motivation. Because when you talk about getting someone to do the most, whatnot, we're talking about how do we get them to move into action? How do we motivate? And there's too many people that just look at the carrot and the stick as these two modes of motivation.
So do you believe in external motivation or internal motivation?
Well, thank you very much. I mean, the internal motivation, hands down in the literature, is far more successful and has a way greater longevity. And if you're someone who's in the business of running a gym or dojo, and you really would think to yourself, well, think of the guys, the 40 or 50-year-olds like me that come in, we are internally motivated. My wife isn't kicking my ass and saying, hey, go to the dojo, don't be a wuss or anything. For me, it's, I go here because it fits needs that I have at this stage of my life.
Right.
And when my knees are gone and my body's trashed, it has to look a little bit different. So I can't bow into some 18-year-old and be like, okay, now I'm going to ruin your night.
Right.
Because you came here to work out and I can't do shit because my body's busted.
Yeah, and I think that like people think they want something and it's not the thing that they want. And so they're motivated to do one thing, but they want you to think they're motivated to do another thing. And it makes the coach and pupil relationship difficult when you're not on the same page. And a lot of it is, I think that's the student's first step, is to be honest with the coach. Here's what I want. You know how many people come in and say, I want to be in the UFC, I want to be a world champion, I want to do this. You actually really don't.
But I would even jump in and say, I think their first step is learn how to be honest with themselves. Or maybe if they're honest with you, then you can teach them to be honest with themselves. Because when people come in with, I always say, when you come in with the end of the journey in line and not the process, like I'm motivated for the process, not the goal or the product. And now you've got someone who says, how many times, and you must get this, it's great. If I start today, how long is it till I get a black belt? Like You must get that every time someone comes in, and you tell them, 5-6 months, perfect. But in general, they're basically, I got nothing out of you. I really thought I was going to get something. But anyhow, so now it's that idea that they're coming in, their motivation is kind of this end product. And that is an external motivator, it's an end product. And if your motivation is in process, I want to learn these techniques. I love the history of it. I love going out and getting pints after. And some of my best friends I've made in dojos. But
the fact of the matter is that the whole system is set up to gauge progress. And people, so there's a book called The Principle of Progress, and it's not directly related to martial arts, but it might as well be.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's basically about how people need benchmarks to measure their success. And we do this in life all the time, right? You graduate high school. The next stop for some people is graduating college. And then for some people, it's getting engaged. Then it's getting married. Then it's having a house. Then it's having a kid. So people benchmark in their mind what they think success is. And when they walk into a martial arts gym, they think success is a black belt. And then they chase the black belt rather than chasing the art itself. There was a guy who said something great. And he said, specifically jiu-jitsu, but you could probably apply this to a lot of things. Jiu-jitsu is no longer an art we pursue, it's a product we consume.
Interesting.
And it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
But if you chase great jiu-jitsu, the black belt will come faster than if you chase the black belt and just try and fill in the gaps with learning jiu-jitsu.
So I'm definitely on board with you there. I think you're right about that. And it's funny, it's a very Western concept, this idea that I've got to get these belts so I can go up. And it literally, in my mind, and this might come out a little harsh, but it's almost like the dance recital of the martial arts world in America.
Yeah.
Hey, you gotta get in front of everyone and break some boards, or you gotta do this, and now I'm gonna give you blue, or now I'm gonna give you green, and they set these colors at you. And where, if you think about in Japanese, if you recall, the term for black belt is a shodan, right?
Right.
Which means first step. Where in American culture, black belt is the last fucking step.
Right.
Where in Japan, they're like, no, you've now learned enough.
Bro, now the blue belt's the last step.
Well, interesting. I used to tell people that a jiu-jitsu blue belt. I have stripes. I get stripes on mine. But anyways, I'll be back for that. But I think that's the whole idea, is that I used to tell people that a blue belt was like a black belt in other arts, where you have to work that hard. Not to diminish other arts. I think it's just how they built it. It's like that's really becomes the first step.
Right.
And once you get there, then it's more about how you grow as a person. And that's what I think the Japanese more meant is, okay, now how do you use this? How do you use this with others? How do you use this with different people? How does this affect your life? How does this make you a better person? Ultimately, in Japanese, that's what it would be.
How do you deal with your own kids who are active in competitive sports in terms of keeping them motivated? Do you kind of let them, do you steer them in a direction, or do you just let them run and you say, hey man, you seem interested in this, go for it?
Brilliant. Because, I think that's the big thing is as a parent, I have a hockey player and a football player, And my whole life, we have.
Do they fight?
They wrestle like crazy. They care about.
Why aren't
each
they
other.
fucking wrestlers?
We've talked about it,
Okay. All right. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, which we should.
Right. But I want to hear about how you deal with them in terms of, are they internally motivated?
But this is exactly it, JC. This is where I'm getting at, is that you get to this point where you're like, I know what I want for my kids. I know it benefited me. And also, just like you and I, like, I wish I got into jiu-jitsu when I had a healthy body and younger, and, but as you and I know, it was hard to find back when we were growing up, and I'm older than you, but back when we were growing up, it was just few and far between. You'd find good teachers and good coaches who were hard to get. Right. So with my boys, I realized that I went to these things because I was compelled to go to them, was never pushed to go to them. My parents were like the opposite. I grew up Irish Catholic and had families that were like, good Irish Catholic boys don't do shit like that. So for me, it was being compelled to learn these things. And if they were going to learn them, they had to be compelled to. So I just, we have a mat in our house, and I would play with them. I would like play wrestle. They absolutely love like that. If you've ever have nephews or something, they love that kind of stuff. So for me, it was just a Guido. Well, that's a play nephew right there, and I'm sure he's a lot of fun to roll around with. But
not anymore.
He might hurt you now.
Yeah, he used to be a lot more fun to roll around with.
At 16, maybe, when he was in high school.
But my point is, though, like with your kids, they're interested in sport. They want to compete. They're playing hockey. They're playing football, and you're not forcing them to do it, and you're letting them kind of like exhaust their own potential there. But would you have encouraged them to get involved in sport because of the socialization aspect of it, or do you think there are other ways to gain the socialization that sport provides?
That's a great point. I think sport itself provides a different kind of socialization. I think there's lessons we can learn in different ways than other kind of areas and activities. So yeah, I think that I knew that they loved me, and I knew that they looked up to me, and I'm 51, but I still consider myself an athlete.
51?
Yeah, 51.
Oh, God bless you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Sláinte. Sláinte de Guido. All right. Thank you. Yeah, that's a privilege not everyone gets. And so even now, like when I would go in the dojo, that's why I'm kind of like, okay, Pee-wee, maybe Grady, maybe Jake, maybe Guido. There's a handful of people that I work with that I know aren't going to break me, so I can still come back. And also, have you heard of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome? No. It's a like connective tissue kind of disorder. It's not that great, but it's kind of what you always notice how flexible I am.
Right.
That's part of the reason I was a gymnast too. Contortionists all have this and stuff. So it's just, but because of that, my joints are.
I think I know a girl who had that.
Yeah, lucky you. That's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
If you're such a lucky person. But anyway, back to my kids. Yeah. I would say that it was more important for them to kind of come to realization. My son got the UFC video game, and then one day he came. He's like, "Dad, I want to learn these things." Got the mitts. I like right away got the mitts, got the glove, got out there, and we just started having this time where, and I felt like, because my dad did that to me. I'm sure his dad did that with him. My dad's dad took out a catcher's mitt and used that to teach him how to punch.
See, my dad never.
But he probably punched you.
No, my dad was an interesting guy in that, like, there are parents that push their kids into academics. There are parents that push their kids into sports. And like, my dad was a motorcycle mechanic. And my dad I can remember my dad trying really hard to teach me, like, pop the hood of the car. One day we had like the sickest garage, and my dad had probably every tool known to man. I can't even fucking hang a picture up. Wow. And that took a lot of work. If you could see the holes behind the picture, there's like,
you call it Grady or something for that.
Yeah, there's like 13 holes back there. But like, I was like drawn to sports at a young age, and not a lot of people in my family were. So my dad actually learned to like play sports with me. So like my dad would go out and like, one year I was a catcher in baseball, and like my arm wasn't as accurate as it could have been. And like my dad didn't know much about sports, but he like marched off 126 feet to like help me try and like, learn that. But it was only on my terms. He never like forced me into doing it or anything like that. I'm sure it would have been easier on my dad.
Did you want it differently though?
No.
Exactly what I'm getting at.
But it could have been easier on my dad if I were taken to like being in the garage, because he could have taught me from his expertise rather than, we were both learning it at the same time.
It's interesting because it's just like, for me, I don't need another me. Mm-hmm. I want two individuals. I want them to go their paths. And what's interesting is both of them have come to me.
Both your sons?
Both my sons, thank you, have come to me and said, hey, teach me some jits, teach me how to throw a punch. Not because they want to go out and start fighting people. I think they're just like I was. They're just kind of drawn to that kind of way of training. It really compelled me, I guess.
But for little boys, I think, how old are your kids?
11 and 16.
Okay, so at that age, especially, like, sports is a huge part of socialization. It's a huge part of learning how to interact with other kids, and it's a huge part of learning how to fail.
Big time. This is another really good topic that we could jump on is kind of like how we learn, and how we learn has a lot to do with like the responses I get to my attempts. And I feel that, and this is when I work with a lot of young girls, and you probably, the boy to girl ratio I get is probably opposite the boy to girl ratio that you get.
Gotcha.
Yep. Cheerleaders, gymnasts, dancers, I have way more women, fewer men, and you probably get the opposite. And maybe we can change both of those. Okay, but nonetheless,
let's change the world, Ross.
I'm behind you right there, man. One more Guinness and they'll probably have it half done. So, but anyway, so I think that this is a big thing because a lot of our girls, they're much more socially connected, much more of that like emotional intelligence. So they don't just recognize their emotions better, they recognize what the hell you're going through too.
Right.
And that can really make a lot of difference on how they interact in a team, how they interact in front of others when they're learning. And when I was a young gymnast, I expected to wipe out a lot. As a younger martial artist, I expected to screw up the techniques and not have the right positions and things. I expected teachers and coaches to come up to me and say, this is wrong, move this here, do this here, turn your body here. So I was raised with this kind of like ongoing, have you heard of like, I think it's Kaizen?
Kaizen, yeah. It's the Japanese principle of like a minimal improvement on a daily basis.
Perpetual.
Massive improvements over time.
But it's that idea of like that constant striving to improve. And I think Zen, we think of like mind, this improving mind, the striving mind. And so I do think that in some ways, think of like a dancer who's been in the ballet for 10 years. They still warm up with like a plie, deep knee bend. They still go back to the basics. How many times when you would go in and you would lead class, you say, okay, line up, and now it's like, here's some basic movements, dudes. I don't care how many years you've been in the dojo or not.
Well, it's just like anything else. Like the most boring parts of any endeavor are the most useful parts. No one wants to sit and rip scales up and down their base, but it's like the most important thing.
Dude, I've heard you rip a 6 scale up and down your base.
I don't think you have, actually.
It was years ago.
Walking away on that thing. But sport has an important role in society.
Agreed.
And it has an important role in socializing young boys and young girls and teaching accountability. But it seems like play and sport are being eliminated from public institutions. And personally, I think that is fucked up.
Well, let's separate that out, because like sport itself, like the amount of kids that are in sport now is greater than ever. But
they're not winning anything.
I guess.
How do you figure out who's going to bang the head cheerleader if you don't know who the captain of the football team is? If you don't know who the best athlete is.
And this is really what it all comes down to.
These are important things.
That's a great question, and
it's all part of socialization.
I remember in class, they had a whole class, when I was studying, they had a whole class on who got to bang the cheerleader, but I didn't make it to that class, which really, as you can imagine, sucked for me. My wife was a cheerleader when she was younger, so I guess that counts.
You win.
I did, so it worked.
You must have been best.
At that time.
But seriously, these are important hierarchical things for kids to figure out. And like part of it sport lends to kids figuring out how to deal with other people.
But let's go back to failure, though, because it's like the idea of screwing up. Right. I mean, and I've trained with you for years, and how many times would I see you like work with someone and you would give them a comment of what you wanted them to do, and you know them, And right away they would start to almost like justify why they didn't do what you had wanted them to do.
Right.
Oh, I didn't grab that because of this, or I didn't move here because his leg was there. And right away that defensiveness, right, of like, I'm not wrong, and I didn't screw up.
Are you here because you know jiu-jitsu, or are you here because I know jiu-jitsu?
Oh, I love it. Do you say that?
That's it. Just pipe down.
I love it that he's never said it to me, though. We remember that he's never said that to me. So that was the first time I heard it.
Because I treat everyone differently.
Thank you. Yeah. And I definitely need to kick.
And I also treat everyone the same because it's 2021.
Oh, well, that's another conversation that we're going to have. But let's unfold into that one because that's more of societal. But because this is important to me, because if we go to the 70s to now, the amount of change of girls' access to sports is way different than it was for boys. And you and I started this discussion that there are great benefits the sport can teach people developing in this society, and it can really help them. And that's what I say to coaches. I really don't give a crap what medal or what trophy this kid gets. I mean, honestly, do you really care about your trophies and shit?
No,
I don't.
I don't even bring them home anymore. And like one time I moved and I like left them all in a box and like,
there you go.
I didn't even care anymore. And really, I don't even care if my students win anything. It's great when they win. The most important thing is that they train properly.
Well, that's really what it comes down to, because this is more where I feel that training in life has this kind of like, how you train is how you live. And if you're someone who goes in and recognizes I got to spend time on my basics, then as you live, you recognize I got to spend time on my basics. I'm going to sleep well. I'm going to eat well. I'm going to be a good person to others and shit.
Also, you've got to be an active participant. Like, you got to be an active participant in whatever endeavor you're learning, but you got to be an active participant in life. You can't just wake up, go to work, pay back your student loans, get a mortgage, take 2 weeks off in the summer and go to fucking Boca or wherever the hell it is people go, or Dry Tortugas or whatever it is, and then you come home, and then the next thing you know, you're dead. Fuck that.
I'll tell you right now, like, I think you hit the nail on the head that when we think of real life, we're thinking of engagement. This very like engaged presence. And when you think of like when you slap hands and bump knuckles with someone, that you don't hear the sound up on Broadway, you don't hear the other people that are next to you, and that your engagement is so focused on what you're doing in that present moment. And that kind of exercise for me isn't just helpful outside the dojo when you have to focus on something. It's also helpful when you have to learn how to not focus on something. That's what I love about bowing onto a mat. You go to a tatami, a jiu-jitsu mat, you bow on, and in my mind, I'm always like, I don't give a shit what was going on in my day beforehand. I don't care if my wife's upset with me or if my kids are upset or whatever. But when I bow on there, I leave all that shit outside the tatami, and I get to kind of like have this clear mind and kind of go in. And so there's this mindset that you create, this focus, this engagement. And when you talk about people you hear teach jiu-jitsu or here to like teach learn my jiu-jitsu, for me, a lot of it is about how do you as a coach make a connection with someone who often in your situation isn't just, afraid of screwing up, which a lot of Americans are, like this idea that screwing up makes me a bad person in the learning, and they could get hurt. This is also scary. Go ahead. So
I want to go back to the screwing up thing because I think that lends to like different people's motivation for success. But I think also when you get people coming to jiu-jitsu rooms or any sort of like endeavor for various reasons, and you've got to understand the reasons why people are showing up there. Some people are showing up because it's their form of exercise. Some people are showing up because they want to be competitive. And some people are showing up because they fucking got a brand new kid and a wife screaming at them at home. And saying, I'm going to the gym is a lot easier than saying I'm going to the bar.
Yeah.
So there are various reasons for all that.
The third place is Starbucks owner used to say, right? You have to have work and home. You need a third place.
Yeah, it's a common thing in like the fitness and service industry is this idea of a third place. It's not your home, it's not your work, it's the other place you can go to seek refuge and collect your thoughts and in some ways just be a different person than you can be at the other two places.
This was Broadway, definitely for me. For years it was, how do I leave work? How do I leave? And then I would go to the dojo and hang out with people from all walks of life. And no one calls me Dr. Kennedy. Everyone calls me Russ. No one gives a shit about what I do. And I also kind of love that, we wear a white gi. It's almost like, like a robe to like make me anonymous. It's like, hey, I'm just a dude in a white sheet, a white burlap sheet, And so for me, there's this erasing of my day, erasing of who I am, and then kind of this moment where I get to work on like my inner me. And if you think about it, think it's, Peter Tulare and I, a good friend of both of ours. But, okay.
Peter who?
A good friend of one of ours.
He's a good friend of yours.
That's right. Opened myself up for that. Actually, I opened Peter up for that. But we've been training. We went to high school together. We've been training since the 80s. And so now when I would go in...
He's been training since the 80s. Jesus
I'm not
Christ.
saying what he was been training in. But
He should be a lot better. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Well, anyway... But that being said, now you can see how for me it's this different place. So I'm coming in, I'm seeing an old buddy, Grady and a bunch of other guys that, you and I will go and get pints with after. And then for me it was also like, oh wow, now this is connection after. But let's go back. What I really want to talk about is like how
I want to stop you for a second.
Go right ahead, man.
You just said the connection after. That's not where the connection is formed. The connection is during. The connection is when you're sweating in someone's eye and you're bleeding on someone's face, and they're trusting you that you're not going to kill them when you wrap your legs around their head and choke the shit out of them. That you're going to let go when they tap out, when they quit. That's where the connection is made. After the fact, it's just kind of like whatever the hell it is. It's just extraneous. It's superfluous. You're building on the connection over the pints after the fact.
Especially though when you're my age, though, as you can imagine too. Like for some of the younger guys too, it would be a different thing. But the other thing I would say too is that it's easy to see in those moments when you're sweating on someone and you're rolling and that trust. But what about just like when you say, okay, partner up and do 100 of these, and you do 97 and you get ready to go, and your buddy just looks at you like, that's funny, I didn't get 100 out of that. And then so it's even those like little moments of like not necessarily fighting, but just like keeping you accountable.
Accountability, and that's what sport does. I always say that I think the best thing for any child, male or female, is to wrestle. Because you can play all kinds of team sports, right? And almost every team sport at some point has you under a helmet where no one can see your face.
Anonymous.
And there's almost always someone you can blame the game on. But in wrestling, it's like, okay, you want to blame the ref? Well, you're just being a bitch. Maybe the ref messes up 1 out of 100 matches. But in reality, it's you, I've said this a million times, it's you with your balls hanging out in your little singlet against another kid with balls hanging out in his singlet, just sitting there, and one guy's better than the other guy. Yeah. And it's about accountability. Yeah. So it's easy to acknowledge all the good things that sport does for society. So when public schools are eliminating competition and recess and play at younger ages than varsity sports, what's the other side of the argument? Why are they doing this? Why are they fucking with us, Russ?
Well, when you talk about schools, I'm on board. I don't have the other side. There's a Western belief that more work, despite the quality, is better. If you look, you look at in the school systems in the 70s, we're kind of in a similar place as Finland and its school systems, and now their school systems is like number one. And we're down here. And one of the things they did is shorten the school day, gave them no homework, like eliminated homework. They gave them more time to go out and be kids.
Yeah, but our schools, this is not the 70s. When you were in the 70s, you could go outside and be a kid. No. You shorten the school day now, no one's going out to be a kid. They're just logging more time on fucking, what's it called? Arc or Fortnite or one of these fucked up things. That's why recess is more important now than ever. They should make the school day longer. Fuck the homework, I don't care about that. But they should make the school day longer and like allow kids in the middle of the day a time for free play and creativity to learn how to interact with other kids. But instead, it's like, I get the sense that a lot of like public schools, and this is totally anecdotal from friends of mine that are teachers and things like that, and a friend of mine who's like got a master's degree and is a phys ed teacher, and they for 18 years, and they've recently eliminated her job at a private school. They don't have a fucking phys ed program, and you don't have to play sport. But my question would be, I get it. They may say they're trying to act like Finland, or maybe we even think we're trying to act like Finland, or whatever any of those arguments can be. But kids are going home. They're isolating themselves more and more for longer and longer than they ever have. So sport is more and more important, and free play is more important. But I get the feeling that schools think that it establishes unhealthy hierarchies and creates an atmosphere of winners and losers when there's play, which there should be.
Well, this idea, like you said it yourself, you go into a wrestling match and you get your ass handed to you, and you have to walk away, and you've got to come to terms with what that means. And you don't have to leave there thinking, I'm now a worthless individual because I lost a wrestling match. Most people will leave with some kind of motivation to train harder, to get better, I'm going to try to win next time. And that's what I feel when we don't have play, when we don't have that connection, the recess time, that we don't have those moments of screwing up and just letting it brush off. Like, think of a baby learning how to walk. And as they're learning how to walk, you've seen little kids, they fall on their ass, they get right back up, they fall.
It's like 2 a.m. when I'm coming home.
Yeah, I've seen it like that. Yeah, they fall, you get right back up. It's very impressive. You're tenacious. But you think of these little kids.
I'm motivated intrinsically.
I don't want to fall asleep in the street.
Right.
I get it. That is definitely a good motivation. But think of this idea of accepting the process of learning rather than looking at how I failed, how I screwed up, this deficit focus. Mm-hmm. You even look at psychology, in the first half of the 1900s was just like, how do minds screw up? How are people depressed? How are people anxious? They never said, let's study genius. It took until a long time. So they said, let's study excellence, people that are really good at things. And instead it was, let's just fix problems. And I think coaching was a similar way. How do I just look at what you did and point out what you did wrong? And in some ways, of course, that's super helpful because technique's important. But when you really pull back and look at the big picture, I think there's much more to be done as a coach than this person who just adjusts technique.
So in terms of motivation, and like you said, like screwing up and things like that, is there any evidence, is there results-based evidence that says people who are motivated more by the need for excellence are more successful than people who are motivated by the fear of loss?
Interesting. It's hard I don't know any research off the top of my head about that. When we look at motivation in a psychological sense is usually split into 2 major categories. How important is this thing and how confident am I that I can do it? And so if we were to take someone who's trying to quit cigarette smoking, that's a good example. How motivated are they to quit cigarettes? You would say, well, dude, you're going to get cancer and you're trying to help improve their importance. Dude, you're going to get emphysema and you're trying to make it more important for them. Uh-huh. And so when I try to improve their motivation to stop smoking as a friend, I say, dude, you don't want to get those diseases. And yet the thing is that no one wants cancer, no one wants emphysema. So when I try to improve importance on someone where it's already important, I just annoy them. Think of that person who's like, yeah, dude, I don't want cancer, but I can't.
Like my mom.
Like your poor mom. And so no moms want cancer. But the thing is, the reason that person still smokes isn't because of importance, it's because their confidence is low. Russ, I've tried patches, I've tried hypnosis, I've tried cold turkey, nothing works for me. So when we see low motivation, we have to ask ourselves, is that motivation low because this isn't important to them? Or they're not confident they can do it? Go ahead.
So you're equating what you described as low confidence, I describe as lack of discipline.
Well, confidence, let's go to the Latin confidalis, with faithfulness. But think of like someone who is like, my confidence is, I have faith and this is going to work. I have faith this is going to come out.
That's what the Latin word means?
Yeah, confidalis. Think of Semper Fi.
Okay.
Semper Fi, always faithful, right? Yep. And so now confidalis is with faith, with faithfulness. I think I'm getting a Google check on that one, so definitely clear us up on it. But the point being though is that when I look at how my motivation is, my energy to do something, to achieve something, to get a goal, and that's another thing we should go back to, JC, because we talk about goals, and we talk about goals in the dojo or goals as an athlete, and I think goals are an aspect of it, but what we really should be talking about are values, and the values of an athlete, and the values in the dojo, because think about, like, for instance, like I value being a good son, and I love my folks, and I value being a good son. And if my folks are old and they live down in Florida, but if they were to pass, I wouldn't lose that value. I still would value being a good son, even though they weren't alive. I would still, the process of the actions I took to be a good son, I value those processes. So goals are things I can achieve, I can fail at. I can start and stop goals.
Sounds finite versus something that goes on forever.
Again, though, just like I said earlier, process versus product.
Right.
So when you and I are working with people and we help them enjoy the process of what we're doing. I came into South Boston.
How did I do that all the time?
Well, I don't know if you can do it all the time for everybody, because you did it for me. Like, I went in there, it was about process. You think I went in there because I was looking for a belt or a tape or some... I went in there because of the process that I went through. I had a really good workout. I learned great techniques. You're a phenomenal technical teacher. And again, when we talk about teacher and coach, I think you're also a good teacher. I know you're a good coach because I've seen you interact with people, but jiu-jitsu is like gymnastics. It's something where technical advice can be very helpful.
So I need to figure out a way to figure out if people are there for the process or the product. And the people that are there for the product, I can make their life miserable. And if I can get the results for them that they need, the product, and the people that are there for the process, I've got to kind of give them the process that they're looking for.
Think of the person who says, how long to take to get my black belt.
Right.
Now that's a product.
If that guy quits in 3 weeks.
I know, but he doesn't have to.
Right.
I think that's what you and I have to recognize.
He quits because he has no confidence that he's going to...
Or, I don't give a shit why you came into my dojo. I don't care what your motivation was. Once I have you, I want to now start to get your internal motivation strong so you'll stay with me. And now we go more to... there's Richard Ryan and Ed Deasy were researchers that study motivation. I've got a couple books I can lend you to at some point, but they do a lot of studies on motivation. When they talk about motivation, they say there's 3 major things that a good leader or coach does with motivation. They work on autonomy to the person that they're working with, competence, and connection. Those are the 3 big things. Now, think of our dojo, think of Broadway. You go in there and you think of competence. Everyone knows you're competent. You teach in a competent way.
What? Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. You have a very competent pedigree of who you've trained with and who you've trained under. So then we think, okay, now where's my autonomy? And that's the big difference. Because the autonomy, how I can feel that I can kind of like make Broadway my dojo, because it works for me where it might not work, that same system won't work for an 18-year-old. And so that's why I think when you talk about it, you teach competence really well, and the people in the dojo are incredibly well connected. They do go out and get pints, and that is important for you.
So then how do you take someone who comes in and they've got all these emotions and like, how do you address someone who, okay, so like you've got a primary emotion, which is a reaction to external circumstances, right? So you're already nervous about things like in competition, right?
Okay.
You're nervous that you're going to fail. You're nervous that you're going to get fucking curb stomped in front of your girl and that somebody's going to treat you like a blow-up doll.
Again.
And then his hand's going to get raised and he's going to leave out the back door of the gym with your girl and you're going to have to Uber home by yourself. Again. So how do you reconcile all those things and get someone motivated the right way if intrinsically they come in and they're not motivated in that way? You know what I mean? Yeah. How do you change what drives someone, and can you change what drives someone?
Well, that's interesting because when we talk about motivation, we talk about importance, because that's really what you were talking about. My importance of training under you is different than this mythical person that we're talking about who's afraid of losing in a competition.
Right. Mythical. You're looking at it.
There's been many myths about you, I think, through the years, though. But I think in general, when we talk about it, is that when we talk, first off, like let's you and I have like a good scientific understanding of emotion.
And then I want to ask you a question as soon as you're done with this.
No, go ahead with that first.
No, I want you to finish.
Well, okay, I'll be a gentleman here, but I would say is that when we think about emotion, the neuroscience is very interesting because it says the major aspect of emotion. There's like 3 major factors that play into what creates an emotion.
Okay.
The first thing, believe it or not, is your internal physiological experience. Is my heart rate increasing? And the body has
Mom's to... sweaty.
Big time, but
Mom's spaghetti.
The big thing is the body has to predict energy expenditure. That's an emotion. am I going to have to run for my life? So now I have to predict if I've got to increase the glucose to my muscles and if I've got to get my eyes to open.
So that's what physiologically happens during fight or flight.
This is an example of an emotion, right?
Right.
The physiological experience is going to
muscles
hit
get
you
engorged with blood.
Before you recognize that you're
Belly
scared.
starts getting butterflies, knees are wobbling.
Tighten it up, because if I'm running, I don't want to puke, and whatever's in there, I got to hold on to it tight. So.
And also your blood starts to flow outward for a male, right? Instead of going inward to digest the food, your blood flows outward to engorge your muscles.
Isn't it brilliant how you and I are, right as we're talking about emotion, we went to gut.
Right.
We went right to the stomach and how butterflies and how blood is coming in and out in different ways. And if you think about it, my gut is probably one of the most like up and down physical sensations I have during a day.
Right. And so to me, and I want to come back to this because I do have another question for you. The butterflies that you feel in your stomach when you're wondering, is this guy going to punch me in the face or am I going to punch him in the face? They're the same butterflies you get when you walk into the bathroom after a girl you really care about is taking a shower and her shampoo smells is mixed with the steam and you walk in there and you can smell her perfume on the countertop. Those are the same butterflies.
I agree with you 100%.
They feel the same.
Yeah.
See, sex and violence are intrinsically connected, but I want to come back to this.
But we can take that even further though. Like engagement is also connected. Like when you are looking at that dude and you're like, is he going to punch me or am I going to punch him? That's engagement. That's focus. That's like nothing else in the world is going on except for right here, right now. And let's say I've got like a billion neurons that are kind of focused on what the hell is going on in my world and what's going on. But when you get in a moment of a fight, or like when I was a gymnast, if I was doing a really dangerous, difficult dismount or something. Thanks, brother. We really are kind of crazy. But think of the focus that you would do. Same focus that you're talking about. This is a similar engagement and focus with the woman. So yeah, we can say sex and violence, but we'd also say engagement in violence, engagement in sex.
See, I think like the butterflies, I don't know why they're there in both of those instances, but you're at the precipice of participating in the most primal acts of self-preservation, sex or violence. Those are the most primal acts.
But they both have adrenaline involved.
Right.
You know,
and they're both primal instincts to survive the species.
Totally. They totally are.
Procreation and defense.
I definitely agree with that.
Can I go back one step and then we'll come back to sex and violence?
It doesn't sound like we're cha-cha there.
No, I want to get on your couch for a second.
Go ahead, mate.
Why is
it's a comfy place.
Yeah. Why is it that I'll let my girlfriend watch me compete on flow grappling, but I won't let her sit in the stands?
Interesting.
What's going on there? See, I say it's because I don't want to be worried about her in the stands or like be sitting there like in front of a group of people that hates me and is going to talk shit about me.
That's most people, though.
Right. Oh, most of them are going to do that, which is fine because at least they're talking about me.
Negative press is better than no press.
Exactly. Or like, I don't know, I feel like my energy, if she's in the building, will be dedicated to her and then not to my opponent. Or
well let me jump in then, because this is a really good point and it kind of loops back to when we were talking about psychology as an athlete and psychology as a coach. Because when we talk about that, I always say like my focus, let's instead of saying like focus, like, because it's such a nebulous term, you know, let's make it a little more concrete. Let's say I have $100 worth of focused dollars. Okay, and like in my everyday, when I do shit, I've got to pay a certain amount of focused dollars to do things. Now, for me to like walk down the street and go home, I get like $1. I don't have to think about it. I'm kind of an autopilot, nothing. But if we're gonna sit down and think, is he gonna punch me or am I gonna punch him? I'm putting all $100 freaking dollars on that focus.
So it's just economics. It's an allocation of a.
That's how I look at it, JC. Because now, when you go in there, some people are really good at what we had talked about earlier. What Guido and I were talking about, like when you bow onto a mat and you kind of like let everything stay, your work, your taxes, the fights with your girl, things like that. You leave that out, and then
that's free.
But now when I get on the mat, I can take all of that, those focus dollars we were saying, that was on my taxes and my work and my girl, and now they're available. And now I can put them somewhere. And so over the years, my goal has been, okay, where am I today? What is JC teaching us? You know, I'll sit there with Peter. And now it's like, can I focus on this? And there's back and forth, because you'll come over to us and you'll sit there and you know how to talk to me because we've been working together for years. And then I got Peter who knows how to work with me too. So I'm kind of constantly getting this. Well, okay, but he knows me. I'll say he knows me. But the point here is that now I'm at this point where I'm constantly honing my edge. I'm constantly in this place of hearing from you, feeling what I'm doing, hearing from him, feeling what I'm doing, and I'm constantly adjusting. And that kind of adjustment is what I think my body has to learn how to move. And now once I now take a context of shit, I'm losing, or no, gosh, she just got an advantage on me. And now my focus dollars are not on the game plan, are not on the tapes that I watched last night. Now my focus dollars are shit. He's got my arm. Oh no, okay, now, oh God, he got me down to the ground. And now my focus, so now you and I, and now this is something that you and I have talked about this at parties and stuff before. I always talked about like being a corner. Right. And like, I when we're drunk enough, I always say, JC, we gotta write a book on cornering, because I think this is something that this is a skill. And just because you're a good fighter doesn't make you a good corner. Right. And I think this is where, when we get a couple pints, I usually talk about this, is that
also just because you're a good corner for one person doesn't mean you're a good corner for another person.
Agreed. Or I would look at that in a corollary and say how you corner one person would not be how you would corner another person.
No, it might be, but it certainly doesn't have to be.
But that's my point. So so now that's my issue. Too many coaches, too many corners, or one size fits all. Yeah, think of different gyms that you and I know in Boston area, and some of the guys that run those gyms just have like one level they turn on and they're all on, and they just have this one way. They're gonna scare away a lot of guys like me that are older, have got like a beat up body from other things, but still want to have that kind of like martial arts in their life, in that world. And so like what I go into as a dad of two and an older dude, and what some guy comes into is in college, is very different. And if you're in the corner and you want to be effective, then you've got to really know that how you interact with us is very different. And I think that's the problem. Too many people think it's a one size fits all, where I think it's tailor fitting or honing to really fit the person.
Also, like the biggest problem for a lot of like coaches and instructors is when you're trying to motivate people, you can't be a cheerleader. You've got to like give them actionable things to do, whether it's technique or like how to improve there's different types of coaches. There's performance coaches and there's technical coaches. Yeah. And so you have to, whatever advice you give them has to be actionable.
Well, let's reword that, JC. There's performance coaching and there's action coaching. And so one coach, I think, can do both of those kinds.
That's fair, but generally people will specialize in one or the other.
Gotcha.
I think I specialize in technical coaching, but I have to be a performance coach also. Whereas sometimes you get someone who's like you're probably more of a performance coach, but you also have to have the technical side of it also. So it's probably not absolute, but it's on a sliding scale.
Think of 100% of your athletes in your dojo. How many of them are really going to react to a performance coach, and how many of them are really going to react to a technical coach? And if you think about it, they're all going to react to each of those coaches in different ways. And so some people like, man, I need that technique, especially beginners, they feel really insecure. And I think insecure learners go right to technique. I
agree 100%. People do not want to deal with performance coaches. Number one, it's hard work. You gotta
hear some serious shit.
You gotta hear some serious shit you don't want to hear, and you gotta do some serious shit you don't want to do. Yeah. But a technical coach is showing you how to do something, where to move to your body, and it can be easier to digest and easier to do. But a performance coach is going to make it so that you can do that when you're in the crucible.
See, I think but I think we are talking about the same thing, because you are a really good example. Your training and the way you train makes you a really good technical coach. And I think that's the benefit of having a good athlete who becomes a coach. They can become a really good technical coach because they lived it. The female obstetrician, as you were saying, they lived it. They had their baby. They can really get you in a different way. But as you and I know, is that if that person can't connect with the person on the ground, they can't help their performance.
So I'm like a woman who's had a baby, went to medical school, and is now a doctor, an OBGYN. I'm a female OBGYN.
Yes, you're an OBGYN that dates jiu-jitsu people.
That's lovely. So when you deal with the younger kids, do you feel like kids nowadays are different than kids who, you're a little bit older than I am, but
a little bit.
Just a little. But I feel like even the Guido's like, what are you, 29 or 30, Guido?
Like 15.
29, 16.
Way to mic yourself in.
Oh, that was a good. I was like, wow, just for the number.
But even Guido at 29, and some of my other students who are around that age, they don't seem to have the same mentality as some of the kids who are like 22, 23. The mentality is just, it just seems to me anecdotally, without anything else, a lot of those kids are just cut from a different cloth than kids who are 30 and over. And even some of the 30-year-olds are they're kind of pussies too.
Yeah, I definitely hear. I definitely hear you, and I'm waiting for Guido to mute us.
I'm just going to keep myself on mute.
That's probably wisest. But so maybe we can look at it a little bit differently. Maybe we can look at, what were the different forces that created these different kind of generations. Now, you and I, and your dad and my dad was a banker. Your dad was definitely more of a blue collar worker. Did your mom work?
Yeah, blue collar. Yeah, but I didn't live with my mom, so I lived with my dad. My parents are divorced, so I saw my mom like on weekends and vacations, but I primarily lived with my dad.
Got it. And so, well, think of our generation or my generation, and I'll extend it a little longer to include you in there. But
thank you.
You're welcome. But what I'll say is that how many of your friends had a stay-at-home mom and a dad who went out and made money and they could still go on vacation? Would you say it was a different percentage than now?
I would say it was a different percentage than now, based only on the fact that I think that growing up, while parents still got divorced a lot when we were kids, they didn't set out and start with a single parent home the way that a lot of people do now.
Well, that's interesting. I think you're right. You are right about that, and there's a lot of social commentary to say about that. And before going,
did you ever read Freakonomics?
Yeah, Freakonomics is great. Yeah. Before we jump too down into the weeds, I guess I would say too, for me, is that like the baby boomers were like the last generation that really got to have one person work, one person stay home. And by the way, when that person worked, they worked one job. They had weekends off. They got home at 5:30 and had dinner with the family. My wife and I are both more educated than either of my parents. My dad has a bachelor's. My mom has an associate's.
I'm more educated than my dad, but I wouldn't say I'm smarter than him.
But more my point is that education in their generation equated more money in your job. You made more money.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that doesn't happen now.
I agree with that.
So my point is, so now, and also I've got my full-time job and I got side gigs too. My wife has got a full-time job, side gigs, and we're raising kids.
But that's a result of technology enabling us to do that, as well as us living beyond our means.
What's interesting is in the 70s, didn't they tell us, computers and robots are coming and they're going to make the 4-day work week. They're going to make life so much easier. And instead of the 4-day work week, we got the 7-day work week.
Oh, yeah.
And we also got second jobs. And now, my dad was able...
Second jobs are on us, though.
How so?
Because we spend money beyond our means.
But why?
Why? Because I don't know. Why do you upgrade your car? Why do you go from the fucking the 3 Series to the whatever Guido's got?
4 Series.
Yeah, or the 4 Series.
But that's what's after the 3 Series, just so you know. But I think that's a very superficial way of looking at it, JC. It's what I say is, my dad went to BC for $6,000 a year. He worked at night to pay for BC. You'd have to be a fucking investment banker to pay for BC.
Well, that's your government at work. That's your government subsidizing student loans and allowing college tuition to increase.
Who was in that government? Who ran that government? Baby boomers. The same people, the same generation that I'm talking about. They made a lot of changes in our generation.
When I say your government, I just kind of mean...
Your government, Russ Kennedy.
Colloquially.
Of course.
Your government. It's mine too.
Thank you. I'm glad we're both Americans.
Yes. I didn't want to be accusing you, because sometimes we fall on different sides of the political spectrum, so I didn't want to sound like I was casting aspersions.
I think we've always fallen respectfully on different places on the political spectrum.
So anyway, so we're talking about the difference between what your dad was doing to pay for college and, what we're doing now.
Well, that if you look at real estate and how much it costs to live in the city, that where you are right now and how much you pay right here in this great part of the city, if we went back to the 70s or the 80s, you and I know you could have got this building for a song and a dance.
But that's because the government subsidizes everything.
Who was in charge of that government?
Doesn't matter.
It does, doesn't it?
Well, not really to...
If you've
Not
already
really
got your
defined.
education and then you now increase the price of education,
Guido?
Is that me, Guido? Go ahead, Guido. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, I looked up who was the president when student loans became public. And in 1965, it was Lyndon B. Johnson.
LBJ.
Screwed up everything, that dude.
Yeah. Well, it's just everything. It's anything the government subsidizes allows that industry to charge more because they know they're getting a check for it in the end. It's like Section 8 housing. It's like you're getting a check in the end from the government, so you don't have to maintain that. You don't have to do a good job. It's disincentivizing.
I don't know if I agree with that. We can even go back to our importance and confidence when we talk about motivation. And incentivization is really interesting. There's been different studies, and I'm going to have to go to Guido on that, but I think it was University of Chicago, and they, it's the Candlestick Test. Have you ever heard of the Candlestick Test?
No, but it makes sense because University of Chicago is big economics.
They really are huge in economics, you're right. So the Candlestick Test is they give you a box of tacks, and they give you a candle and matches, and they say, okay, we need you to attach this candle and light it, attach it to the wall so it doesn't drip onto the ground. And so everyone kind of focuses on it and everyone eventually gets it. And what they do is they time how long it takes you to figure out this problem. And it's not a crazy, difficult problem. The big problem is that the tacks are in a box and people just see the tacks and they don't see the box. They call it functional fixating. Mm-hmm. And they just fixated on the tacks. And then what the answer is you tack the box to the wall and put the candle in the box, and now it falls onto the little box. So
smart
and believable. But the thing is that let's say Guido's gonna do the test, and we're like, Guido, I want you to do this test, and I want to know like norms, how long it takes the average person to do this, and then I'm gonna time how long it takes Guido to figure it out, and then I go to you and I'm like, JC, listen, I'm gonna give you $1,000. Or I go to like 20 people, $1,000 to who gets this first. The thing is the second I throw that $1,000 to incentivize, you now take longer to finish this problem.
So there was another experiment done by a guy, and they did it with clay pots.
Go ahead.
And they said the person who makes, or the team that makes the best clay pots is gonna win this competition. But they divided you up into two groups. One group could take the allotted time, and you could only make one clay pot. The other group had to make as many clay pots in the same amount of time. And the group that always won was the group making the most amount of pots because they were able to learn from their mistakes rapidly and correct them and find a way to make the best pot. Whereas the group that could only make one in the same amount of time concentrated too much and wound up overthinking everything and fucking it up. But at the end of the day, I want to go back. How does any of this pertain to, are we making softer kids?
Well, first off, we have to understand that our kids are coming from a different place. I had a mom my mom's sole job was to raise me. And it meant something to her. Like if I turned into an asshole, she would have felt responsible for that.
Right.
And now we take the next generation. Most of them have been raised by daycare. And now you go to a daycare teacher who is getting paid minimum wage. They don't give a shit what they put into this kid. So there's definitely a different kind of focus and engagement that my generation got because we had a stay-at-home parent. And that parent could really challenge me in different ways because they really knew me. So they knew how to engage me. Just like you in the dojo, you would know where I'm maybe not working hard, and you know how to motivate me. You know what to expect of me compared to Tulare, which is much more. Way more.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
High expectations.
Thank you, sir. But so now you recognize that your relationship with me as a coach versus a teacher,
right.
You have much more of a connection with me. So you know how to motivate me. You know what to say to me. You know what works for me. You know where my injuries are. You know what my background is. But now you take some kid who comes in and just teaches. And now there's no connection. And now there's no challenging in the same way. Now there's no progress in that same. If you and I were to really think about what leads to progress, it's trying something and fucking it up and then having to go back and honestly figure out where you screwed up and try a fix.
So are you saying that the primary caregiver nowadays is not always invested in the development of the child, and therefore we're resulting in a softer child/product at the end of the day?
I think I would think that that's an accurate. What I'm saying is that you really have a very different interaction when it's a parent with their kids at home versus a bunch of kids in daycare. And that interaction, I think, leads to a much more blurred line to like what is going to lead to a good, strong, accountable kid.
So when I hear what
you say soft a lot, but what do you mean by that?
I guess I mean just really being a pussy.
But by the way,
and
have you ever heard Betty? Look up Guido. Look up Betty White's quote on vaginas. And she has this quote about like everyone talks about having balls, and those things are sensitive.
Of course, they say that as
vagina can take a beating. Like, that's what she said. She's pretty good.
And of course, they say that in the most endearing way possible. But I think
I know you love pussy, so
why do people say grow some balls? Balls are weak and sensitive. If you want to be tough, grow a vagina. Those things can take a pounding.
She's brilliant. That woman is a national treasure, by the way. But go ahead. But you basically, what I hear you saying is people who give up easily, people who don't have good goals and really go after their goals.
Right.
Aimless, unmoored kind of like people.
This is what I think of, and this is anyone who knows me in my personal life has heard me tell this story countless times. And I've heard it a handful of times as I've, taught martial arts and MMA and things like that in different incarnations. And it's like, I'm not going to get into the details because I don't want anyone to feel outed. But there are things that I hear my students say that like, if that happened to me when I was their age, I would have walked right up to someone and punched them right in the fucking mouth, no questions asked. And when
disrespect, you mean?
Forms of disrespect, whatever they are. And now I hear kids tell these stories, and I'm like, well, what did you do about it? Nothing. Why? I don't know. And it's like they don't seem to have any passion. It's like they're worried that their cool guy card is going to get pulled if they get excited about something. And it's like, I get it, whatever, generations change. Maybe I'm an old curmudgeon or whatever. But I mean, I don't think you've ever really lived. The time you feel most alive, there's 3 times you feel most alive. One of them is when you're having to defend yourself in a physical manner against someone who you don't even know if they're evenly matched, right? That's one time. The second time is, when you're in an amorous relationship, physical or otherwise with someone that you're attracted to, male, female, whatever. And the third time is during loss.
Okay,
bereavement, whether it's like the breakup of a girlfriend, the loss of a pet or a loved one. Those are the times where you feel the most alive. And I feel like I look at some of the kids, and when I say kids, like I say like under 25, and it's just like everyone's on fucking lithium or Xanax. They're just like droning through the world. They don't care about anything, and like, they're glued to a screen, and no one's like, who said the quote? Like, you never really know about yourself until you've been in a street fight. How much can you really know about yourself?
It's interesting because I think, when we were talking about like your brain and how like you have this certain amount of focus to the world, this engagement to the world, and the
three all on Fortnite.
But those 3 things that you talk about, those are times where you're fully engaged. My $100 worth of focus is fully spent on the moment.
You're overdrawn.
Exactly, but in that one moment. I think that's really the difference here, is that like people really are disengaged. And I think that we make an easier life of disengagement. I mean, even think about like how people care for their bodies, how people feed themselves, or how they train or don't train or are sedentary. How disengaged they must be from what you and I would recognize as like the human animal for 2 million years.
I think we make excuses for people to become weaker after stressors have been received than it used to be. It used to be that you got strong. It used to be you got stronger from stressors. Now it's okay to get weaker from stressors.
Interesting.
And it's like, you remember, I mean, when we were kids, it was sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt me.
Everything sometimes. Yeah.
And there was character building, like, oh, things suck, but it's character building. Now it's someone calls you a name and it's like you're filing charges and you're getting deplatformed and we need a safe space and we need all this shit. Like, how do we go from 18-year-old kids storming Normandy Beach and going to Vietnam to these little motherfuckers needing a safe space because someone's eating a peanut near them? What the fuck?
Well, I know, I hear you. I mean, before we jump down to peanut allergies, I think that, but it's important to kind of look at a couple of things. Because there was a lot to unpack, kind of like where you were just going down there.
I'm heated now.
No, but I'm all for that. I feel there has to be a place of growth, in the Buddhist sense, that stress brings growth. Think of guys that, astronauts that go into outer space, their bones start to degenerate because they're in zero gravity.
Right.
So they got to spend all their time on a machine.
When you lift weights, you bench press 200 pounds. Easy.
Thank you.
Your body prepares because it thinks that the next time you might have to bench press 205 pounds. And so it gets stronger. Yeah, and that's what we need.
Yet then as a good coach, you put on 210.
Right. Exactly.
And so now we kind of get to this point is like, how do I bring stress that promotes growth versus stress that promotes breaking?
Right. And so I get that it's about dosage, but I just feel like the same dosage.
Well, hear me out first. Let me finish that first, sir. Think of that idea of stress that brings growth versus stress that brings break. I think the issue that you're talking about is that too many people are so afraid of the stress that brings break. So they do so much to avoid the stress that brings break. And at the same time, they end up limiting the stress that brings growth. So now the protective factor, Guido, help us out again. I think it's Ben Franklin. Everyone said it at 9/11. It was when we sacrifice freedoms. Do you know what I'm talking about, JC?
When we sacrifice liberty for safety,
we get neither.
Something to that effect.
We'll get Guido work on that. But so I kind of feel it's like that same thing. So now we end up trying to protect our kids from stresses because we're afraid of the breaking of the stress. But then at the same time, we stop the growth.
Right.
And so that what I get at is it really, when you talk about...
Say that again, because I think that kind of nails it. We're trying to protect people from the stresses that break them so that we deny them the growth.
The stresses that grow them.
Right.
And so now
what cutting out recess does to kids.
Cutting out unsupervised fucking time.
Right.
It seems like we always have to do something with a parent or an adult watching these kids. And in general, if kids are coming from a good place and they're healthy, you put them together, they're going to make fun. They're going to have a good time. Right. And you're going to have a little bit. Now, this is where you and I love to talk about people in general. And are people good? Is there a Lord of the Flies?
Right.
Or, does this, and so now I feel that the only way that we evolved this far, the only way that we got as humans this far was because we learned how to cooperate. And I was able to connect with you, cooperate with you, and that cooperation led to more food, maybe even better food.
Right.
And then that better food led to better brain growth. And now I can learn techniques like how to hunt, and now I can learn how to communicate where I can be on one side and I can communicate with you without yelling, with facial expressions.
But isn't part of that assuming your place in a social hierarchy?
Well, this is interesting because if we look at hunter-gatherers, and this goes to Chris Ryan. I know you and I are both Chris Ryan fans. Mm-hmm. In his book, what was it, Price of Progress?
Yes.
Civilized to Death.
Civilized to Death.
See, I call it Civilized to Death, and you call it Price of Progress. And one time you wrote to me about Price of Progress. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I was like, I wrote you back. I'll look into it. I'm like, no, I already read it. It's Civilized to Death. But what he kind of talks about is that there's so much into collaboration. One quote he had, which was great. He said that interviewing a hunter-gatherer, they said, what do you do with extra food? Because you can't store it. And she says, the best place for extra food is in my friend's belly. And so there was this intertwined, and this for me is where when religion and agriculture really about 12 to 15,000 years ago, they really took place in human culture. And when they took place in human culture, they added a lot of stupid stuff. And now it wasn't as egalitarian. It wasn't as my interdependence. It was now became zero sum. And now I'm clearing this area and I'm growing in this area. And if you come in and start eating my food, I'm going to fight you because I've been working on this area. My kids have been working on this area. You can't just walk in during harvest. And
So what's wrong with that?
Well, I think because of that now, as humans, we stop this zero sum. We stop this interdependence and we go to zero sum, mine versus yours. So it's not that it's good or bad, but that we evolved for a million freaking years before then with interdependence.
But that's because of the number of people grew.
Big time.
Yeah, and the number of people dictates how we treat. Like, it's like, in small groups, like, what is it? There's a reason why army platoons are a certain number. Because
100 is something. They say it's like, what, 120, 150? It's like this.
The platoon is like 15 and a battalion is like 100 and whatever.
But they say that's what a group of humans would be, like 150 people, and they would do everything.
And what's the number of like actual connections you can actually have? What's that called? Fish knows that. Guido, the number of friends you could actually have. It's
Fish?
like 50. Sean Fisher.
I thought you were talking about Sean Fisher.
He always is talking about, there's a name for it. It's like, humans can only have so many
He's right. And everything else is very diluted. And
150 contacts?
150 contacts.
Yeah.
And that's what social media does to us, is it makes us think that we have contacts with all these other people. That's a fucking disease.
You know,
What do you think
honestly,
about that?
I'll tell you though, JC, that's something, I'm not super involved in it because it just seems so fake to me. This idea that someone takes 500 pictures and they choose one with seven filters and they're going to add.
It's a lie.
Well,
You're living a lie.
You're putting so much effort into producing this that, well, what could you have done with that effort that would have been productive?
Well, doesn't it go back to confidence? And it's like, if I showed you my real life, I don't have the confidence that I get the number of dopamine hits that I'm getting from this fake life.
Think about it, women will say this without makeup, to be seen without makeup or to be seen without being presentable. Right. You see that raw aspect. It definitely is different for men and women, and we can talk about that in a little bit because I know that's on our list. But
just a quick correction too, it's actually 5 best friends.
5 best friends, but there's a number, it's a larger number for connections.
It is. If you think of like how hunter-gatherers, maybe look up that, Guido, like what would be the size of a hunter-gatherer group? And I think it's similar size to what you're talking about, JC, this 150 people or something, 120.
No more than 100 people.
Yeah, so now we see that like as a species, as an animal, we evolved to kind of have 100 people that we're going to have our time on this world with these 100 people.
Right.
And then you become interdependent.
And of those 100 people, you let them into the area that you've cleared and grown your crop.
Well, this is before we did crops. This is from about 1 million years ago to 10,000.
Oh, so initially they only worked in groups of about 10 to 12 adults plus children.
That's a platoon.
No, this was the hunter-gatherers that lived.
But JC,
Because that's an army platoon. There's a reason why it's that number of people.
That's exactly what you were saying, JC. So like you would see, so that might be and think about this, like let's say you and I go, we're gonna hunt, we're gonna go look for some wildebeest. Guido's gonna take some of the other people, maybe people that are carrying babies, they're gonna go gather. They're gonna look for berries and nuts and shit like that. And now you and I come back and we're like, rough day. We didn't kill nothing. Right. We're gonna go hungry. And then Guido's like, no, you're not. We got stuff for you. Right. We eat that. Then you and I go out the next day. We come back with a boar.
Right.
Everyone eats. They didn't get as much. They're psyched because we bring back them. So this interdependence. And by the way, I can't catch that boar without you. I need you and a bunch of other guys and people to help me with how we're going to catch this creature. And so this interdependence is what took us from getting us out of the trees, as apes and really evolved us into humans was how we connected. Part of the reason we lost facial hair, right? You can see my emotions and my communication from my face much easier without all that hair on it. So we connect. We have the platoon. Okay, this 10 of us are going to go hunt. This platoon is going to go gather. But then we all come back together into this, what was the next thing you said, troop or? Battalion, which would be what would you say, like 100, 120 people?
Whatever,
Or what Guido was saying, like that 100 people. And so now you think, what happens when you go to 1,000? What happens when you go to 10,000? When you're here in Boston?
It's diluted.
But is it diluted or is it just no longer functional?
Well, there's things that don't scale, which is like one of the things like when we talk about like different world economies and economic structures in smaller countries and it's relative to the US, things just don't scale sometimes. But I want to go back, so do you think it's that the kids nowadays are not interconnected the way that we were? They're isolated and they're not receiving the same, what's the point?
You said it really well though. They're not interconnected the way we were interconnected. I was interconnected because I went out into the neighborhood and connected. I knocked on doors. The only people that freaking knock on doors now is like politicians. Like no one uses
They even
doorbells.
do that, or is that figurative?
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's like so now you think of it. I knocked on doors. Hey, can Joey come out and play? And then we would go do stuff. And so I really kind of like, if we would say like bootstrapped friendships, bootstrapped relationships. Let's get a game together. We're gonna play football. Okay, we couldn't call on someone's freaking cell phone, dude. You go down there and go to their houses. There's 3 dudes down there that might want to play. I'm going to go down here. Like, so we had to work together. And then we would get together. We had a ball. We had a field. We had 10 guys. Okay, 5-on-5. We had to make rules. We had to sit there and be like, that was a touchdown. No, it wasn't. We had to figure it out. And so we went out and made ourselves create battalions and troops. And when we caught our troop, we worked together. We relied on each other. We gave each other shit, and like if they weren't aligning with what we were doing.
But one of these little fucking nerds would say that they do the exact same thing playing Call of Duty online.
But that's the thing. It's not the same. It's different. And I'm not saying it's better or worse because I just don't know. I feel it's worse because it wasn't what I did. And I don't get it. But I do know that my son, he's one of these guys. He's online with his friends playing different things, and they love it. And they're tight. He and his buddies are tight.
So he and some of his buddies might be tight, but there's also people that he's never going to see that he's playing with.
That's probably a good point. Yeah, it's a really good point.
There's a lack of connection there. And also there's a lack of connection because when you're online, you're interacting with basically an avatar. You don't really know. Like think about social media. When you're interacting with someone on like Instagram or whatever that you don't know. Like I got students, they just contact people on social media all the time. And I'm like, that's A, it's fucking weird. B, it's fucking dangerous.
It is.
And C, it's like a charade.
Yeah.
What
was that old Japanese plays? Thanks, Guido. Like the kabuki, maybe? Is that kabuki mask? It's just a modern form of kabuki mask, isn't it,
right.
JC? Like here's the mask I'm making for you. My whole thing is that I think in some ways, the way we were forced to go about to do things created those stressors where we had to work it out. And now, if I'm online and you and I have a disagreement, I write you a couple of fuck you texts or whatever.
No, you write a passive-aggressive email. That's what people do. They write passive-aggressive emails.
That's like 17 pages long.
But something you'd never say to my face because you get punched in the fucking mouth. And that's the problem with kids now. As Mike Tyson said, the internet has made everyone way too comfortable with disrespecting people and not getting punched in the mouth for it.
The sage Mike Tyson.
There's no real-time consequences. Okay,
I got one more thing.
Drop it.
There's a great Irish saying. You got Irish blood in you, right?
A little bit.
Guido?
Yeah.
Guido? With a name like Guido. Okay, no. But I would say there's an Irish phrase that say it's often a man's mouth that breaks his own nose.
That is true.
And so that's kind of what I'm getting at is that like if we don't have the broken nose, then the mouth can just do whatever the fuck it wants. And that I think ends up being the problem.
So my final point, Russ, on potentially living amongst a softer generation would be, I have a question.
Go ahead.
When you travel and you're in the airport, does your luggage have wheels?
I'll say that my luggage does have wheels, but I do not use them. I'm someone who prefers to exercise my grip.
That's what I'm talking about.
Really? Because it's funny. I have a metal forearm from gymnastics. I shattered my forearm.
Right.
And it took me forever. I shattered it in like 20 places. And it took forever, all metal in there. And it took me a really long time just to like move my fingers. And since then, I've always had this thing about like, if I can have a moment to exercise my grip, I want to use it. So I would and I used to tell my wife, like, let me carry yours because I like the balance, like one on either side,
you're doing like a farmer's carry.
But 100%. So like for me, and this kind of goes to like this, I call it like that athletic spirit, like for me, I look at life as training. So like I go into the gym and train, but when I'm outside of the gym, it isn't like it stops.
But also it's like you go in, you carry your bag, I don't know. Maybe this might come off wrong to some of the listeners, but if you're going anywhere for less than 10 days and your bag,
carry your damn bag.
Pick that fucking thing up, especially if you're a man.
Yeah.
If you're a guy, pick the goddamn thing up and carry it. There's no reason for you to be wheeling a purse.
Well, it's also this idea too that we forget, you and I saw each other. We start with a handshake. We do the bro hug. But, Tulare, Grady, we always start with this handshake. And I was raised, when I saw people, I'd shake their hand. And I didn't just flop my hand into their hand.
Like cold fish.
Cold, dead fish. We should say, yeah. And now for me, it was it had meaning. That it was just more like, hey, you're a man, I'm a man, we're a man. We would squeeze hands. So for me, it's like when I see people always doing it, it's like, why do you make your life so easy? Because doesn't it make you less strong?
Well, I think of it like, okay, so you got luggage that has wheels and you opt not to use them.
Yeah.
I have luggage that has no wheels, so I have no choice. I do that by design. But I think that when you have wheels and you choose to use them, even when your luggage is maybe carrying your copy of Us Weekly and your fucking Xanax, whatever you need for your flight, and you choose to wheel them, that to me is a lack of mental toughness.
Interesting.
And I don't really know if there's a difference between mental toughness and, the other things we were talking about a few minutes ago in terms of kids just being softer or people being softer. But
maybe let me ask you a quick question. Like when you think about psychological flexibility, how would you describe someone you think has good psychological flexibility versus someone who doesn't have good psychological flexibility? And I want to hold you to your definition.
I'm not the greatest in terms of psychological flexibility, although
really,
I know that might come as a surprise. Although I do try sometimes to be better at it. I would say someone who considers context and lets context inform their opinion on certain things.
That's brilliant, because I think that does align well with how I would look at it too. Like the idea that I will either continue or cease a behavior based on the context of and aligning to a value of mine. So like if I was doing something that I recognized, there's no more reward to this. Well, if I was doing it for the reward and there's no more reward, I'm not going to do this anymore. So like psychological flexibility would say that I can change or persist based off does what I'm doing align with my values as a person?
Isn't the reward structure based also on not only the reward that you think you're going to get, but the feeling you get when you think you're going to get the reward? Yeah.
It's like the anticipation.
It's the anticipation, the mental cookie, right?
That is really where you see the biggest response in the brain is in that anticipation,
right? So
not the reward itself.
I know for me, one of the things I always talk about is if I wake up on a whatever day it is and I think I'm going to go get a workout in, and something happens in my day and I don't get that workout in, that's more miserable to me than a day when I wake up and I don't plan to work out and I still don't work out. It's the denial of something. I've already given myself the mental treat, and then I didn't get to fulfill it in that scenario. You know what I mean?
Well, it's almost like you're saying that at that moment you felt that how you lived your life didn't align with your values. And your values, for you especially, is that, an athlete, I say this to my kids all the time, an athlete is as an athlete does. It's about action. It's about what you're doing. It's not about what you're talking about. It's not what you're wishing.
Right.
It's about what's actually happening, what you're doing.
But you got to be about it if you're going to talk about it.
Well, you've heard that before. Those who do, and those who can't teach.
Right.
And you've heard that bullshit and stuff like that. But for me, it's just really about this honesty that we really, and I think as humans, that's what we have to learn. When you talk about soft versus weak.
I call it leading from the front.
Go ahead.
You're talking about the honesty.
You should lead from the front.
lead from the front.
Yeah.
You should be the first guy off the helicopter and the last one off the battlefield.
Interesting that it was Al Siebert, Siebert. He wrote a book called The Survivor Personality. And he went and he started studying prisoners of war that survived and guys that survived crazy ass battles, people that survived cancers and shit like that. And he said, I want to really see, what is it about these people that really made them survive? What kind of characteristics? Did you find it? Jared Guido?
I did.
His name's Guido.
Guido, sorry, my bad. It's more of a title, I think.
Yeah. Survivor Personality by Al Siebert.
That's right. So that was the book. Thank you for just checking my memory on that. But he kind of talks about that it was really the person that survived was the person who did what you said, really took the context in and then said, how does that context play into me and who I am? Rather than go the other direction. Who I am goes first. Whatever the context is.
There are contexts where who you are won't affect the context. And it'll kind of be a battle between kind of asserting your will on a situation versus the situation asserting itself on your will.
It's such a fighter phrase, asserting your will, isn't
Right.
it? Now you hear that in the fight game quite often. It's interesting to me because it does, again, it comes back to this idea of focus and engagement, and I'm going to keep bringing this back to coaching and cornering, if that's okay with you, because it seems to be like one of the themes that you and I always talk about,
Yeah.
And so, like, for me, this engagement that I'm trying to get, and I'm trying to take, like, for instance, maybe let's take some like fighters that maybe you and I both know from the world. Like, think of like a Nate or Nick Diaz.
Right.
In their mind, I would say they are just they're like the pit bull in the fight. 100% of their focus is in how to overtake you and win this fight. And yet, I would say other fighters struggle with that. There's a real warrior mentality to that, like.
There's a difference between a warrior mentality and someone who's trying to win a fight, and an athletic mentality and someone who's trying to win a contest.
Now, this is my big thing, though, because when I send people, I always say that, like, if you look at football, even cheerleading, so much gymnastics, the Russian military does gymnastics. So much of it is really, how do I train people for battle? How do I get people to work in union? How do I get people to follow a plan? And so a lot of the coaching techniques come from drill sergeants and how they would do this. So a lot of it is, as you and I would know, okay, you're no longer a person, you're just a cog in our machine at this point. And so that's how a lot, but is that how you look at the people that come into your dojo?
No, I mean, it's also different when there's a business side to it. I mean,
but also when there's no war. I mean, what's my war right now? Right now, when you get a guy like me that comes into Broadway and we go to train, you have to think to yourself, like, what is Russ going to get out of this here? Okay, like, he's going to learn techniques that he's been learning his whole life, and he's going to get better at them, and he's going to practice. And if someone attacks him, maybe he'll be able to do a couple, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's an old guy. He's probably not going to jump into the competition ring. And you've seen me. I get injuries and stuff because I'm getting old. So why am I here? Like, what you would say, well, he comes here for different reasons.
Let me answer it.
Please do.
So what I would say is, when Russ comes in the gym, Russ is here because he needs a third place. Russ is here because he wants to break a sweat and he's bored standing on a treadmill. And this is something that interests Russ, and it's possibly a skill he can pass on to someone.
Right.
So it's something that you can turn around and teach to others, whether it's for pay or for teaching kids. And you're not sitting at a bar. And you want to break a sweat, and there's a social aspect to it. But that's different than the kids that come in and, they're fresh off a college wrestling mat and they're looking for a way to extend their competition life.
Totally.
It's very different.
Yeah, so you're going to have those in the same, I've been in your dojo. You have UFC fighters in there next to some weekend warriors like me who are going to just come in because we want to train.
Right.
My point is that we're all kind of in there for similar reasons. We're in there for personal growth. As you said, the third place is big. Connection.
And hopefully to get stronger from the stresses that are applied by being in there.
Competence.
Right.
And so for me, you see autonomy, competence, connection. Right. Even in your situation still comes out. When I come in there, I got to be like, JC, I can't do the same thing that Kyle does, or that dude who's just left college wrestling.
Right.
I'm going to freaking break if I do that stuff. So my autonomy has to be a place where I can come to you and be like, yeah, JC, you know me and you know where I'm at. I can't go do this with those guys. What should I do? And you give me shit to go do.
It's about hormesis, I think. Hormesis, Guido. Hormesis is like just giving you. I think it's about dosage, right? It's about like giving you enough stress so that you'll grow stronger, rather than so much stress that you'll break.
This is our theme, right?
Like vaccines.
Exactly.
Like vaccines.
Exactly. Stress you enough to prepare you where you don't break. Brilliant. And this is a very Buddhist concept if you think about it, right? Stress brings growth. And if I don't have stress,
it should bring growth, but I feel like it doesn't anymore.
Well, I think this is really the crux of what you and I are talking about, though. Like, well, what? So I said this earlier, is that we have stress that brings growth, we have stress that breaks. And so many parents now are very afraid of the stress that breaks. By the way, I'm not. Between you and me, I think there's just as much growth potential in the stress that breaks that there is in the stress that grows, because you can turn that around. So I guess, when I think of it is that fear of failure and what failure means is been a big difference, I would say, from Gen Xers going forward. It's starting to get a little bit different. And I felt that, like, as a martial artist, you have to just be very ready to screw up at all times. You have to be ready to tap out. You have to be ready to, get choked. So for me, it was built into our training was daily screw ups, daily getting beat, daily getting my ass handed to me. I used to go into Broadway.
But it can't be every day, because then that stress is going to break you and you're going to leave. It depends on
only if that stress means that I suck. Like if I go in there and you and I roll or flow roll, so you're not killing me, and you tap me out, do I leave there and say I'm a piece of shit and that I'm not valuable and that I'm not good? Or do I leave and say, geez, I learned a lot from JC today, and so even though I tapped, does it mean that I'm bad?
Or do you say, this is something I wanted to ask you about too.
Go ahead.
Or do you say, that guy fucked me up so bad, I'm going to come back tomorrow and kick his ass? And that lends to this
That's
question. Yeah, that lends to this question. So I have an emotional and a logical response to these things. For example, hear me out before you laugh.
I'm with you. I won't laugh.
So, I used to go summers to Spain to do this camp, this jiu-jitsu camp, with Roger Gracie.
It must have been awesome.
So
Spain's beautiful. Beautiful. The people there are wonderful.
So when I go there, I do nothing but go to the gym. Everyone else goes out and parties, but I sit in my room and I take notes on everything. But anyway, that's besides the point.
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, because I'm there to train, and I don't want to waste 1 minute. I don't want to waste one of those dollars, those $100, on recovering from a hangover.
But wouldn't $5 with a señorita gone really well?
No, because I've got multiple.
Spanish women are absolutely beautiful, man.
That's
beautiful
fine.
people.
Fact check that one.
Thanks.
Yeah, fact check that. But the problem is not the problem. The issue is there's beautiful women here.
Agreed.
But there's only one Roger Gracie you can learn from.
I'm with you, brother. I'm with
so you know how hot you have to be?
I think it's Roger, by the way. But...
Yeah. Either way, you got to be one hell of a woman to pull me away from learning from the go. But here's my thing. So I've rolled with Roger a few times.
You tap him a bunch of times?
No, it didn't go my way. And it didn't even come close to going my way.
How close are you to size and shape with him?
He's like one version bigger than me. He's walking around like 235. I'm like 210 right now.
Okay.
So he's a bigger, taller, lankier guy. But here's the thing.
Go ahead.
So he fucks me up beyond recognition. Like I've been doing jiu-jitsu now for 22 years.
Yeah, you're really amazing.
He fucks me up like I've never even done the sport before. And I come home, and
awesome.
the first year I come home and I tell Sean Fisher, I was like, dude, I rolled with Roger. He fucked me up, but I think I was being too respectful. I think I didn't give him enough offense. So then I spent the entire year before the next camp
with Fish working on offense,
thinking about how, I can't even win my division at Worlds. He's won every division at Worlds. thinking about, and I'm over here thinking about how, emotionally, I think there's no way that with a year of practice and training and focusing that I can't at least be competitive. And then logically, I say, of course there's no way that I can be competitive with that guy because he's the greatest of all time. And it parlays into this thing where I've never swam competitively in my life. I'm 46, I've got a bunch of injuries.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe, Russ, and my girlfriend she's not very supportive in my endeavor that I think with the proper training and 6 to 10 months of dedication, I'm not saying I can win an Olympic gold medal, but I think I could be on the Olympic swim team. I honestly do. I really do.
Really?
So, yes.
Wow. Because, have you seen Michael Phelps? He's a freak.
But here's the thing. Emotionally, I feel that way. Logically, I don't.
Okay, I'm with you there.
So where's the divide?
So I'm with you here because one way you're saying you're a driven and very motivated and very ambitious person.
Yeah, and I think she actually is discouraging me because she doesn't want to lose. She doesn't want to lose me to pursuit of Olympic gold. So I think she's going to.
I think because then you might end up going to some special gym somewhere and all you do is swim, and that poor woman, she would be lonely. I feel for her.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's a couple things because you're really talking about personality aspects of you, and anyone who's sat with you for more than 5 minutes knows that you're an incredibly driven person. But can we go back about Roger Gracie again?
Yeah.
Because for me, tell me that you didn't finish that and feel good. Like when you left him kicking your ass, did you really feel discouraged?
No, you want to know why? Because
Yes, I do.
they gave me a nickname after that.
Awesome Man?
And no,
Superman.
They started calling me Animal.
Wow.
Because I just wouldn't stop coming no matter how many times he submitted me. And so that felt good, that they at least acknowledged like what I was doing and things like that. But
yeah, your effort and your attention more than the result.
Right, and which I care about.
But this is, again, not product, but process.
Yeah.
And so even when you and I are talking about it, you're saying, Russ, I felt good because of the process of what happened, how I was, not the result. I got tapped out 20 times. And that's what I was asking you. When you left Padre Gracie, you probably felt like on top of the world. You were like, man, I just rolled with one of the best ever.
Right,
ever.
I was very giddy.
But that's my point, though, right? None of that was like, I suck. Was it?
No, it was how can I get closer to his level?
That's what I'm talking about. Now, that's motivation. Now, think about it. The importance was high. You were already important when you went there to talk. It was already important for you to do this, right?
Right.
Your confidence got changed when you rolled with him. He rolled with you, gave you a nickname, connected with you, made you feel confident, and enough confidence. See, I think that's the key.
Right.
You didn't walk there leaving like, I kicked his ass, I'm the best in the world. You left eager.
Like, do you know my buddy Lex Friedman?
I know Lex Friedman.
So Lex is like a brilliant. AI scientist.
Yeah, brilliant.
So before he found fame, fortune, and females on the podcast circuit.
He's your buddy?
Yeah. Before he found fame, fortune, and females on the podcast.
I didn't know that. He's a freaking brilliant dude.
Yeah. He was teaching at Harvard. So one day or MIT rather, sorry. MIT.
I know he's here. He was local guy.
Yeah. Trained at Broadway. And
did he train at Broadway?
Yeah.
Dude, he trained at my dojo?
He trained at my dojo.
Our dojo?
But the point being,
that's crazy.
I think this goes to my level of delusion. You say it's drive. It might be delusion because he put a lecture online one day and it was cool. I texted Sean and I was like, dude, did you see Lex's lecture that he put on Facebook? That's really cool. And the follow-up text was something to the effect of, I'm going to try and get better at AI and robotics than Lex. I've never taken a science class past the high school level, other than meteorology to get my undergrad. And this guy's been doing it his whole life. And I'm sitting here thinking my competitive instinct kicked in and I thought, I think I can be better than this guy at the thing. And I think that all the time. About mostly everything.
I was going to say.
So is that delusion or is that drive?
I think it's a really good question, and I don't know if it's an either or answer. But I will say this. Maybe let me ask you this question: in what sense in life has that benefited you, and in what sense in life has that hurt you?
It's hurt me when I've taken on pursuits that don't necessarily further my career or make my life more stable.
So waste of energy and waste of time and resources.
They create instability in my life because I'm pursuing things.
Okay.
To a degree, I also view instability as something that births strength.
Agreed. I'm with you there.
So,
or at least creativity and innovation.
Right. So,
what's the other side of the scale? How does it benefit you?
I mean, it benefits you because it makes you more well-rounded and it gives you a better view of what you are and are not capable of.
Also, how does it help you in the moment?
Well, you just feel good about doing something.
And so for me, is that let's say two dudes come into Broadway and they're both the same size and shape, and one of them has this attitude that you're talking about. But let's say it's delusional. Let's just go with it. And now we have this other person that it might not be delusional, but this person doesn't have this same kind of drive. Every second that person, the first person is in the dojo, I think they benefit more. And so for me, when we talk about goals and winning a fight or winning a competition, I talk about, you gave us a drill to do. Did I win at that drill? You gave us 100, when we wrap our legs around someone, do 100 sit-ups, 50 to each side, Did I win at that? You tell us shrimp across the floor. Did I win at that? And so for me, my focus then goes to the moment. So I think the martial artist in general has this understanding of the present moment as these successions of focused attention after focused attention. So whether it's bump, slap, let's go, or here's just the drill that you have to do. It's that moment-to-moment attention that is going to make someone pull ahead of someone who just goes in there and punches a clock.
So that's very process-oriented.
Yeah.
If you're a product-oriented person and you're not getting the product you want, ready for this?
I'm sitting and ready.
What if, as a big, strong fella, I do feel pretty strong. Do I look strong?
I thought you were talking about me.
Both of
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah, and Guido too.
What if I'm not process-oriented, but my product is not necessarily giving me exactly what I want,
Yeah.
and I decide that tomorrow I'm going to identify as a female so that I can then attain the product that I want, because that's what I'm actually after. Not that that's what everyone's after.
Yeah.
And now we have a situation where we have transgender sports controversy.
Yeah. This is brilliant. Thank you. I know it's not an easy thing to talk about, And so first off, let's understand that there's an understanding of gender and an understanding of sex.
One's biological and one's socially constructed.
Thank you, sir. And so when we talk about this, we can recognize that there's a lot of complications in modern life that can make those things not so binary. And
Sex is going to be binary. You've either got balls or you got a vagina.
it's simply not true, sir. Look up intersex for us.
Is it statistically significant?
Intersex is probably a few out of 1,000 people or so. Go ahead, help us, Jared. with that.
Intersex people are born with sex characteristics, including genitals, gonads, and chromosome patterns that do not fit typically binary notions of males or female bodies.
So they can basically match with themselves on Tinder.
Well,
I think you would have several people that do anyway.
It's an umbrella term used to describe a wide range of natural bodily variations.
So when we look at how sex...
Like
for
a
instance,
hermaphrodite?
well, not necessarily. You think how you and I have nipples. Why the hell do we have nipples? We're never going to nurse. But we would say, oh, wow.
Because it's the pleasure center of the upper body.
What about this? What about your face, buddy?
I'd rather have
the mouth. That's a big piece of the
Wouldn't you
pleasure.
rather have your nipples licked than your cheeks licked?
I think that my mouth is my pleasure center of the upper body. My nose is second place, by the way. I like smells. I don't know
That's
about
true,
you.
'cause the
Do you
ear-
like smells?
I'm very olfactory.
Me as well, sir. So
Yeah.
think about it. You just trumped your nose and your mouth for your nipples. And we got to talk about that.
But that's tactile. Like when you're smelling something, like, you know what it's like to walk by, like in 5th grade, like the girl who wore colors from Benetton. Like, she was like the smoke show in 5th grade.
She sure was.
Yeah, but that's a
I know.
sense.
You
That's
don't
not
even know what we're
tactile.
talking about, but it's totally true.
Right.
But that hits you in this visceral way, like that almost. But by the way, not just that. Tell me the first time that you when you lean into your girlfriend for the first time and you go to kiss her and you smell her up close. Tell me that didn't just kind of hit you in a real visceral
Right, and you
way.
get the butterflies, like you're going to get in a fight.
So now we see that this sense hits us in an emotional place, and that emotional place for you is this intersection of engagement and also this intersection of connection. Like, here we are, and when you and I roll, the connection is, Russ, I'm going to tap you out. When you roll with her, the engagement's a little bit different.
Right.
Maybe not. But the whole point, the whole point here is that so I can recognize because you kind of come back to that a lot, don't you? Like this idea that violence and sex can be very linked.
Well, they're intertwined. I think they're intertwined as I said, that they're tools for self-preservation. And I think that society in general, violence can be a useful tool. And I think that society does a good job in the media, in movies, in music, in schools of teaching us the difference between sexuality as a good tool and sexuality as a harmful tool. But we only view violence as a harmful tool. And my point is that violence has as many positive effects as sex does. And I'm talking about social violence, not asocial violence, meaning asocial violence are crimes of possession. Like I'm taking your purse, I'm taking your wallet, I'm taking your car. I mean like two kids duking it out after school to figure out, who gets to take Betsy to the dance.
Or like you insulted me and we got to settle this.
Right. And the thing is like the whole process is a learning process, because before social violence becomes social aggression. Social aggression is an act in which we both puff our chests out and things like
But
that.
JC, before you go on, can you just let me know what you mean different between aggression and violence?
Aggression is a precursor to violence.
Because like in me, and let's talk about this for 2 seconds if it's okay, because I want to clarify this. If someone's listening, because when I think of aggression,
if someone's listening, so we just we actually been chatting so long, and my desktop is in the shop, so we're running everything off my my little laptop here. So I had to move a little data around, shuffle some things around. It's like when you're 22 and you go out drinking, you got to kind of move some money from one account to the other account. We're good to go. But to get back to like social and antisocial violence, social violence is usually preceded by social aggression. The difference between social violence and antisocial violence is the aggression period allows people to extract themselves before physical contact takes place by use of words in their mouths. Yeah. Whereas asocial violence, you don't have that opportunity.
Interesting, because if you look at primate cultures, like different chimpanzee cultures, well, not ours, I was going to say different chimpanzee, but thank you, very correct. But different chimpanzee culture, they'll say that a lot of their altercations are these incredibly violent expressions of aggression and things like that. But the wounds are superficial. They're really not made to kill by any stretch. And to really, if there's any injury, it's a very superficial injury. And they said, just like you said, is that most of the interactions end before an actual physical altercation.
Right. You know, so when there are two male lobsters and it's mating time, and there's like some dope ass female lobster, and
they're sweet, man.
And they're both trying to get it in. What they do is they walk towards each other, they make contact, and they rise up onto their tails, and they start to fight with their claws. And as soon as one lobster goes to its back, gets pinned, Ippon. They both know that it's over. Yeah. And the lobster that got stuck on his back scurries off, and he has to find like probably a less attractive, probably not a skinny lobster to mate with. But that's what people do. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're here is to...
So that would be social violence.
Social violence
did not lead to really any kind of injury other than like a...
It defines a hierarchy, and it tells your potential mate, someone who you potentially could produce offspring with, hey, I've got smart, fertile, strong genes. Right. This is what you want, so that little bastard doesn't die in the briar patch.
I'm with you. So a couple of things, you know. So first off, like Robert Sapolsky, that's for Jared Guido. That Robert Sapolsky he's have you heard of him?
Yes.
Brilliant zoologist. I think he's at Stanford. And he had this troop. You and I may have talked about this before.
Is he the toxoplasmosis guy?
No, that's the cat feces thing.
It's crazy. I think I have that.
He might. Shit. Oh no, I have heard. Wait. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. But so Sapolsky is a primatologist, and he studies this baboon troop in Africa for years.
How many baboons are in the troop?
Do you know what a troop? It's actually called the Congress.
A Congress? Are there 12?
That's a good question.
I'll bet the number is similar to the number we were talking about earlier.
Or in the same ballpark. Yeah. It's funny you say, because I think you and I would recognize that there really is almost like we could plot it on a graph, right? And we would be there. So interestingly, so he goes and he studies this baboon troop for years, like decades. And one year he comes back, and what he finds is that some local campers had left food that was contaminated.
Yes.
Kills all the alpha males and some of the alpha females. And now he was, of course, distraught. His years of studying these people, these primates, he's really upset. And now there's this question, like, what happens? What happens when the alpha males are taken away? And you and I might say, well, if hierarchy really determines culture, then we would see a new hierarchy created.
Right.
And that's not at all what they saw.
What happened?
They found... Thank you, sir.
Oh, shit.
So, JC, you are right with the connection. There's about 50 baboons in a group.
And by the way...
Which is consistent with the platoon, which is about...
That's 50. What we were going to say. It's a platoon.
Which then makes up a company, which then makes up a battalion.
Company, yeah.
But...
You better get in there, Russ. That's going to...
Perfect.
Oh, look at you. You're an expert.
Dude, years of practice. Thanks, mate. Yeah, thanks for that, Guido.
So, okay. So then what happened after the alpha
Okay,
male
thank you.
baboons
So-
shit the bed?
Females now rule that truth.
That's what's happening in America.
I knew you were gonna talk. I was like, thank you, mate. As it was coming out of my mouth, I was like, shit. But basically what it says is that hormones don't necessarily define hierarchy in this situation. Now, might makes right can really happen in a lot of situations.
But might is not always what makes the alpha.
Exactly. It's more about how you get on with others, right? Is that what you're going to say, Sue?
Well, I think there are three things that work.
Go
I
ahead.
think there's the might part of it,
Yeah.
there's the brain part of it, and then there's the intersection, which is like how your brain allows you to apply your might, which is social intelligence.
Well, that's more what I'm talking about, the social intelligence, because you know that if if you're an alpha male and you're too difficult to others, you're going to be killed by several betas.
Right. And at its core, like men who are like big and dumb and brutish, they rely on that aspect of their personality to achieve status in a hierarchy. But I mean, if I'm going to be self-deprecating and say that men are brutish and dumb and thuggish, let's be honest. I mean, women who are more relationship oriented more often are conniving and deceitful and manipulative. So, I mean, there are pros and cons to both things. And when the might is gone, maybe that left a vacuum for the female baboons to be manipulative, backstabbing, and catty, and like some of them.
This hole is just getting deeper and deeper and
He's so
deeper.
excited to unpack that.
I'm almost like trying to bail you. I'm like, JC, let me jump in before you get pinned. Or
I mean, are you going to charge me for this session?
you got me paid in Guinness. But I would say this is that let's look at it a little bit differently. You know, like you know, let's come just from a different angle. You know, like
I'll allow it.
Oh, thank you. So at least for the thought experiment, you know, let's say that women will say, and it's true, at 2 years old, a female's brain is much more aligned for communication than a male's brain, like far more wired for that. Much more better at really receiving what someone else's emotions are. And so if you think of someone who's not good at that, let's, you and I maybe say something, if you know someone on the spectrum,
Right.
maybe they're really not good, the autism spectrum, like maybe they're really not good at reading your emotions, your social cues and things like that. And so on one side, we've got that person who doesn't read other people's emotions at all. And now let's take the most hysterical, feminine, in everyone's business, making drama out of everywhere woman on the other side. So we've got this scale, right?
How salacious.
Thank you. But on one side, we've got totally disconnected, and then on the other side, we have overly connected. And so you can see how on one side, disconnected can very easily lead to violence and treatment of you, because I don't give a shit. I don't even know how you feel. I'm so disconnected from you that I can do anything because I'm not going to respond to how it affects you.
No, I'm going to respond to how it affects me.
100%. But now I go to the other side and I've got this woman who's totally connected. Now, if she had a child or a baby that she was raising, baby can't communicate well, doesn't have words.
I got to stop you.
Go ahead.
Because on one side of the analogy, you're talking about how disconnected men are dealing with other
Adults
disconnected
versus kids.
men.
Yeah.
And now you're talking about how a woman is dealing with a child. And that's apples and oranges.
Well, maybe if we look at it not as apples and oranges, but because they're both fruit, right? In this situation, what I'm saying is that we've got men who can disconnect easily, and we have women who connect really easily. And that basic foundation can make a really big difference on how interaction occurs. So if I disconnect easily, I can hurt you and not worry about that pain. But if I totally connect with you, any pain that I give you, I'm giving me. Mm-hmm. So that is going to lead to a very different next step of interaction.
Isn't the first side of the scale like the sociopathy side?
Yeah, like the total. Well, when we talk psychopath, sociopath would be like, I dig two of you, but I hate everybody else. Like I love a sociopath.
I'm one of those. I think.
Yeah, you're a sociopath. Yeah,
cool.
I mean, that's what everyone says, but I'm just kidding. But the idea that like you love your own, but you hate everybody else, everyone else.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
So like, he's like on the nose. But you and I say, but a psychopath is everyone, like everybody. So that's the psychopath. Right, okay. It's not even connected to anybody. But you and I would say that on one side we have that more sociopath, doesn't know how to connect, but then we have someone who overconnects. And in some situations, it's really beneficial you're talking to a baby, you're helping a baby, knowing how to connect with a baby, very helpful, right? In the same way that if you're going to go hunt and kill an animal, you can't be like, oh, this is going to hurt the poor deer as I kill it. And so in some ways, there's benefit of human culture to know how to connect and to know how to disconnect.
So men and women are biologically different.
Well, my argument here is that why does the presence or absence of a penis mean that I could connect or disconnect? Like, shouldn't I be able to connect when it's important for me to connect? Like, I've got 2 sons, and they were babies, and I connected with them, and I knew how to...
Well, you're speaking in absolutes. I mean, like, I think that it's...
Well, I'm trying to develop a range.
Okay, I think anyone who's 100% at either end of the spectrum is probably off.
You're right, sir.
But
can we... You can see my point is more to define a range. Like, we have someone who's totally disconnected, we have someone who's... So what I'm saying is that totally disconnected dude, well, that might help if he's typing up some software that he wants to do for work. He might make money. But he's going to have a lot of trouble finding a girlfriend or boyfriend if he's really disconnected.
So that goes back to my point about some of my younger students and younger people that I know anecdotally who they're connected to a computer, not to individuals. They don't know how to interact with people because their recess got canceled. They don't know how to develop social hierarchies because they never competed in a sport. And, COVID's wreaking havoc on everyone's socialization process. And like sometimes we go to tournaments and we'll go out after, and like one of my young students will be like, ooh, there's a pretty girl down there. And my answer to that always is rip a shot of tequila and walk your sorry ass down there and fucking spit some game.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, and they look, yeah. And rather than go talk
she might say no.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't respect the process, which I'm going to get back to in a second. They're looking for the product, which is why instead of walking to the end of the bar, talking to the babe, honing your skills, sharpening your flirting, doing the whole thing, they look down at their phone and start swiping because it's product oriented, not process oriented.
And think of that. Think of what would have occurred, right? Like, so here you guys are. You're at this pub, and you send them over. Think what's on the line right now. And this dude goes, and if he reaches out to her and she says no to him, he has to come back to you so emasculated.
No.
Go ahead.
I disagree.
Go ahead. I love it.
You roll up and you talk to some hot girl down the end of the bar and she tells you to go kick rocks. You got to walk by and you're like,
points.
It's just like...
Points to you. I'm with you.
It's just like getting choked out. What did you learn in that process?
Good point.
And also...
It's like getting tapped out. Yeah, you're right about that.
And what did she just miss out on? She just missed out on the experience of a lifetime.
All of this right here.
Right.
Honestly.
That's what I'm saying. Joke's on her.
No, but my point is you can see why someone who might not have the psychological flexibility might think that the risk of looking like a dick to you or a failure to you. Now think about that. This goes back to our initial thing. Like, are you okay with someone telling you that you just fucked up and that you have to change?
But it goes back to what I said about tournaments. I don't care if you get a gold medal. I care that you train the right way.
Well, now let's stay out of the tournament. Let's stay in the dojo. Because I love the idea of the dojo because this is my daily experience.
Confidence comes from a series of tiny little victories strung together consecutively. And part of the victory...
Let's also add some of the failures.
Right.
They help. They also play into that.
Just getting off your phone, putting it in your pocket, and walking down to the end of the bar to approach a stranger is a victory.
Here's the thing,
that's
right?
part of it.
Let's go back 15,000 years. Right? No. Let's go back like 7,000, 5,000 years. And there's a dude, and he's got a rock. He's trying to break stuff with a rock.
Yeah.
This other dude's like, dude, I got this metal hammer. And this first guy's like, dude, you and your metal hammer, it's just so easy, and you do it in one sweep. Me and my rock, we got to do it like all day long to get the same result. But you know what? I grow as a man because I'm using this tool differently.
I love the analogy, and I see where you're going.
Okay.
But in no way...
It wasn't too obvious, was it? Go ahead.
But in no way, shape, or form does the rock-wielding goon grow as a man from just repeatedly hitting the same thing.
My point is this, is that if my kid is using a hammer, and he hits his thumb, do I say, put that hammer down? That hammer is leading to pain and suffering, and it's only going to mess you up. Or do I say, dude, you're not using that hammer appropriately?
Or does your son just learn to treat everything as a nail?
Well, that's true too. But more my point is, as a teacher, as a coach, It's more important for me to recognize that it's how I teach them to use the tool that's important, not at first how well they use the tool. People that first grab a hammer are gonna hit their thumbs. And so do I tell them like, dude, this is why you're hitting your thumb, let's keep practicing so you can use this tool appropriately. You and I didn't grow up with phones. I mean, it's literally like, can you imagine if we had index cards or notes? We would pass notes in class.
No, I memorized people's phone numbers. That's what I did.
I knew people, I could tell you right now, my best buddy's phone, I could tell you Peter Talieri's phone number from when he was in high school.
No, I mean, I could like walk up to a girl and be like, can I have your phone number? And she'd give it to me.
Oh, and you would memorize it. But that's
part of my shtick. Not
tries to show him how bright he is.
Right.
It's like, look, I didn't have to put that in my phone.
It's not just about the guns.
It's about up here, baby. Up here.
Do you know what an octopus is made out of? Only 2 things.
8 legs and
muscles and brains. That's all they're made out of. They're the most perfect
and they're
creature on Earth.
amazing. Cuttlefish are amazing.
Yeah, they're the most perfect creatures on Earth. Anyway, let's go back to...
We'll leave marine biology for a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll go back to...
Since no one here is a marine biology.
I did take a class in marine bio, but that does not qualify me. You're right, Suki.
So we kind of danced around the topic.
Transgender, that's what you want to jump back to, isn't it?
I want to get back into it because I'm curious. You and I frequently disagree on things, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on trans.
Respectfully,
as a Division I athlete, as someone who works with athletes,
I hear you.
What are your thoughts on transgender athletes?
So first off, I want to say when we say transgender, for me it's like saying, Asian. Like, what does that really mean? Is that Japanese, Chinese? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, it's really
it's
not.
a broad term.
So it's a big, broad stroke. And I think that transgender, I mean, do we mean woman to man, man to woman? And my big thing is...
Well, the NCAA defines it as MTF and FTM, female to male and male to female.
Get it. But before we go to the NCAA, let's just go back to society. Right now we're talking about less than 1 million, or maybe right around 1 million people in the United States. So much, and you can double check on that on Guido on what that might be, but I think the Williams Institute did a study on it. They're out of UCLA, and I think that they did a study and they said that about 3.5% to 4.5% of people were gay or bisexual in this country, and that about 700,000 to like 1 million or 1.2 million were. I read it a long time ago.
About 1.4 million adults
that are transgendered.
Correct. Identify as transgender.
We're talking maybe 0.6% or something like that. You can do the math.
0.8%.
0.8%. So a real small percent. So first off, we say that. Now going back to what Guido and I were just looking up with intersex, we can recognize that we know that in development, in the beginning of development, everyone is in the middle. You got both sets of potential genitals to have. And then at the presence or absence of testosterone at a certain point, it's going to make one set kind of merge into male genitals, but the absence, the same stuff would form female genitals.
So if you got a bunch of testosterone, you get a cock and balls. You have less testosterone, you get a clitoris and a uterus.
But this is interesting because if we look, now let's switch to athletes. If we look at boys and girls, and if we were to take like track and field events, like sprinting and jumping and things like that, until puberty, there's really not a huge difference between the results on who's the fastest boy and who's the fastest girl. But right after puberty, when the influx of testosterone really gets into a kid, that's when we see a huge gender gap in results. So you would say that there are several thousand men right now that can run faster than the fastest woman in history.
I've got it right here, actually.
Oh,
in 2017 alone, thousands of men and boys achieved times in the 400-meter faster than the best lifetime performances of 3 Olympic women champions in that event. In 2018, 275 high school boys ran the 400-meter faster than the lifetime best of Olympic Team USA member and world record-holding sprinter Allison Felix. While in 2017, I already said that part.
You did. Good reading. But what I would say...
But I had to actually research it.
No, thank
It's
you
not
for
just
doing
reading.
that.
It's not just reading.
No, you're right. It's that extra step. I appreciate that. It really shows that you go the extra step.
I wasn't going to come to a gunfight holding the knife.
Right, or some swear words.
Right.
So I guess what I would say is that it's easy to look at this as genitals, male versus female genitals. But what I think we're forgetting is that testosterone causes growth in a way very different. So the more testosterone is going to cause way more growth. And when we talk about success in sports, we're really talking about success in those areas. Someone who's got more muscle, someone who's got longer legs. So the growth and mass and muscle amounts are probably more the reason that we see success in sports rather than penises and vaginas. And so when we look at transgender, we just think genitals. But when we look at success in sports, it's less about genitals and more about how did you grow? And did you grow more muscle? Did you grow different limbs or stronger limbs? And someone who has testosterone develops at a different rate and a different way than others.
So do you or do you not, I don't want to say support because I feel like if the answer is no, it sounds like we're like bad people or whatever, and we're not bad people.
No.
Are you in favor of transgender athletic competitors, male to female specifically?
I feel like I'm a politician. What I would say though is this, let's look at it differently. Let's look at that certain people go into athletics and sports, and some people might have a biological difference. Let's take asthma. Some kids have difficulty getting more air into their lungs.
I'm going to call bullshit on this.
Okay, but hold on, let me get it out. You know, that some people, well, first off, you and I know that the treatment for asthma, Provenolin, is
clenbuterol.
It's adrenaline.
Right.
Now you tell me that you and I go into the gym and you take a shot of adrenaline before your next set or before our next roll, that isn't an advantage to you.
How long does that last? And to be fair, clenbuterol is against the water. So if you test for that, you're busted.
Interesting.
So also to be fair, you're not allowed to do that in major competitions. So
but not competitions, I'm talking about training, brother. And that's the difference here. If you're training moment to moment.
When we talk about college and Olympic athletes, we're not talking about training because there is no process. Those people are only results oriented. You and I and a jiu-jitsu gym are about hobbyists.
I'm with you here. Well, let's take Oscar Pistorius. You know who he is?
Yeah, the guy with the fake legs.
So he was this really good job with that. He was
South African.
We would have said a Paralympian. Para-Olympian, right? Yeah.
That's the word in 2021?
Well, no, I mean, he played, he was very successful in the Paralympics.
But he did have fake legs.
He also, though,
petitioned. They were springs.
He petitioned to compete against guys with human organic legs.
He's competing up. There's a difference.
So here's the point, brother. This is exactly my point. He had a situation where he needed fake legs. He got fake legs now. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So those prosthetics, though, did they now take his health situation and did it now bring it up to where it would have been if he didn't lose his legs?
Or even provide an advantage.
And what they found is that his legs provided 25% more power or energy than muscle. And so at first they said, no, you can't compete against guys with regular legs. But then he came back at them and he said, yeah, but my legs can't come off the starting gate nearly as fast as your legs. And my legs can't run the corners nearly as fast as yours.
But I think that when we talk about male to female transitioning, we're less talking about Pistorius competing.
But when are we talking the transition?
No.
Before or after puberty?
So I think we're talking about after puberty.
Okay, because that is when
it matters.
That is when most happened.
Right.
But think about that. That meant that a man already went through testosterone presence.
Exactly.
So that's what I mean, that we really can't look at it as one blanketed statement transgender. That if I had someone who was raised a woman and was not exposed to as much testosterone for her training for her whole life, and then she comes to the point where she realizes that she's got a gender identity issue and she feels more masculine and she decides to become transgender and become a male, she'll go through hormone replacement. And I've worked with people that have done this. interestingly, just a little side note, I worked with a person who was a female, and then when they started taking their hormones, testosterone, I was actually counseling them when this occurred. So I saw them before, during, and after. And it was so interesting. They came in after they started taking their hormones of testosterone. The first thing they talked about was they couldn't stop looking at tits and ass. They said that they would walk down the street. Once they had testosterone, they were turning their heads and they were constantly checking out someone's ass. And they said that before they had testosterone, they would just walk down the street. And I said to them, can you see?
What a bland existence.
Well, it's called being a woman. Is what you're saying.
You got it. Like tits and ass are part of.
And they get us going in the morning, and they get us. Thank you. Time out. But more my point is that it really changed how they looked at their world. It really changed their engagement. It would change almost aggressiveness, is like you're talking about. More my point is that if someone goes through puberty without the benefit of all that extra testosterone, because you'll look at boys and girls until puberty. That puberty is when boys take off.
You're taking a much more academic and civil and diplomatic approach to this.
What?
Than I am. And what I'm talking about is the number of like high school kids who transition male to female, and then win weight with the competition or sprinting competitions, and potentially rob a female athlete of a scholarship opportunity. And here's the thing that I read yesterday about desisters.
About desisters?
Right. So there's
people that desist.
Right, people that desist. So there's they believe that groups of young males and or females are transitioning, but they believe that it's a social contagion and that they're doing it based on peer group movements, and that they believe that they're doing it for reasons that are disingenuous. And then what's happening is, let's see here, I also am going to read this. Russ,
right ahead,
I'm not smart enough to
you were very smart. Go ahead.
Of children referred to gender clinics for either gender dysmorphia or gender nonconformity, a 2008 study found that 61% desisted from their gender incongruence or nonconformity before reaching the age of 29. So that means if you've got 1,000 people, let's say 100 for the math, because I'm math challenged.
That's okay.
You got 100 people that decide that they're going to transition, and let's say some of those people are athletes. 61 of those people can now be competing after puberty with the benefits of testosterone, years of testosterone, bone density, ligament strength, muscular hypertrophy, can be competing as females and then desist before they're 29 and go back to being cis males. And they've robbed all these other people of these opportunities. Forget about the fact that there are certain sports where that could be dangerous. I think that we need to, as a society, we need to take a stand on this. This isn't one of those things where we talk about people being on the spectrum and there's a continuum here and there's a continuum there. It's a matter of undoing what everyone who fought for Title IX has done. And it's a thing that people are not committed to. Let me scratch that. Some people are committed, as this study shows. This is not my study. Stein, Whalian, and Cohen Ketnis in 2008 did this study. I didn't do this study. Another study found that in 2013, 63% of people with gender dysmorphia or nonconformity desisted before the age of 20. What say you?
Well, so first off, when we talk about those percentage of people, we're still talking about a percentage of a very small percentage. So it still is a real small amount of people that we talk about. There is a genetic aspect. When they look at twin studies, if you look at monozygous twins versus dizygous.
What are those?
So when we think about it, when we want to look at how genetic something is, a great way to do it is to study twins. Twins have the same genetics. And sometimes if we have twins that are separated in different environments, we have a great experiment on, is it genetic or is it environment?
Nature versus nurture.
There you go. And this is the big argument. You and I have talked about this before too. There's a great book called The Sports Gene by Epstein.
Greatest book ever.
It's a great book, but he really has a really good argument over, is it nature, is it nurture?
Yeah.
And he doesn't really answer the question, does he, JC?
I feel like he errs on the side of nature.
He does, but he doesn't really come flat out. But I think when he talks about, remember the high jumper?
The high jumper put the sled dogs.
Yeah, that was the other one. So so I really feel that nature sets it up, and if you have the right environment, then nurture can amplify and augment nature. And I think we'll have a lot of people that have good nature that doesn't get augmented by good coaching and good environments. And so when you see a Michael Jordan, you see a Roger Gracie, that's someone whose nature and nurture really combined in a way to augment what they were given.
I think in the book he describes it as you have to have three things. You've got to have the software, which is your mental ability to download the information.
The hardware
to exercise it.
Yeah.
And then you've got to have the environment, which can be made up of parents, coaches, time, place, money, all those other things.
Go ahead.
But how does that get back to, is what we're doing in sports by allowing male to female transitioning transgender athletes, is it fair?
Fair play is important to me. Fair play is very important to me. But that's why I say things that, like, there are conditions that people will have that the treatment of that condition can make play unfair.
Right.
And so what I want to do is to say, okay, well, let's look at the fairness of play rather than the genitals of who's doing it. And so that's why I bring up asthma. Like, okay, is it fair play that this kid that I train with every day takes a shot of adrenaline before he gets onto the bench, and I don't?
So the rule is, like in the NCAA and the Olympics, to even these things out.
Yeah.
Male to female transitioning athletes have to go 1 year under testosterone suppression therapy in order to qualify. However, the British Journal of Medicine has done a study, and they found that even as much as 2 years later on, trans women who are men who have transitioned to female were still 12% faster on the 1.5 mile run.
They'll have more muscle mass, they'll have more speed.
They did 10% more push-ups and 6% more sit-ups.
Yeah.
And that's after 2 years of hormone suppression therapy.
But again, it comes back to testosterone, JC.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So even after 2 years of taking a man, suppressing the testosterone, he still reaps the benefits of a lifetime of testosterone.
He does.
So my question to you, and I'm going to keep on asking, and if you don't want to answer, that's fine.
Is it fair? So I would say, is it number one, is that rather than look at genitals and whether someone is cis or trans.
He's not going to answer, is he, Guido?
I am. What I'm going to say is...
Well, he said he feels like a politician. So.
I do, didn't I? I did, thank you, sir. But the point really is that I just don't know if it's a fair question. And so it's hard for us to talk about fair play with an unfair question. What I'm saying, what I said is that it's hard.
I can't think of a fairer question.
Well, how can it be fair if transgender is such a variable term? What does that mean?
What's variable about it?
Well, did you transition when you were 7? Did you transition when you were 20?
Do you think a 7-year-old should even be allowed to transition?
They don't. They usually say that they don't allow it until you're an adult. You shouldn't choose.
But all over the country, people are transitioning and preparing their kids. Like,
how many people do you currently know? Tell me how many people you know that are transgendered.
I know one.
Okay, how many do you know, Guido?
One.
No, I got two.
You counted Guido's friend?
No. I think
we're counting the same person.
We have one in common, and then I have another one.
Do I know the one in common with you? Is it someone from Jiu-Jitsu?
I don't think it's cool for me to put this on the microphone. So.
No, but you could be like, okay, maybe you might know them, Russ, or not. Okay, well, let's go on.
Right.
Well, my point is it's a very small amount of people we're talking about. So I look at it more as, how does someone who has a condition...
There's also a small amount of bank robbers in the world, but it doesn't mean that just one bank robber robbing a bank makes it any less fair or legal. The number of people doing it has no...
I'm with you. I totally agree with you. And number one, we can't talk about them as a homogeneous population because they're simply not. And there's a very different result for people that have testosterone through development versus people that don't have testosterone through development. And then people that get added testosterone, they do get increased muscle mass, increased speed, increased strength, increased endurance.
I'm less worried about female to male transitioning who then take on testosterone therapy because I feel like they'll still be at a disadvantage competing with biological men.
Correct.
So I'm less worried about that from a fairness and a safety standpoint than I am the other way around.
So you're okay with it being unfair for them?
No, I feel like it's a choice. So if you're a female that transitions to male, you understand the obstacles that are ahead of you. And you're taking that on. But if you're a male who's transitioning to female, and 68% of them by the age of 29 may desist, you're you're putting people's health
I'm
at
with
risk,
you.
and you're taking away opportunities from people. If you're a female that's transitioning to male, you understand that the likelihood of you injuring someone other than yourself, or taking a potentially a scholarship opportunity or an Olympic opportunity away from someone, is relatively minimal. But it's almost certain as a male transitioning to a female that you're going to rob that person of an opportunity.
So what if we took Oscar Petraeus? He's now got prosthetics. He took a treatment for a situation that he had, and this treatment gave him what some people thought was an advantage. And what they said is that, does this treatment bring you to 100% of where you would have been if you had not had this situation?
Let me stop you for 1 second.
Go ahead.
I think that's not a great analogy. I think a better...
Why so?
Because he has prosthetic body parts, but I think there is an analogy that can be made.
Okay, go ahead.
There years ago was a golfer who had some sort of problem with his legs, and he was good enough to be on the PGA Tour, but he had an issue like getting really tired walking the course. And so they wanted him to be able to ride in a cart as opposed to walk the course with everyone else. And the argument was, well, he's saving energy by riding in the cart, and we're all getting tired. And then people said, well, he can't walk the course. Well, unfortunately, that's a prerequisite. It's like, you've got to be able to do that. I think that's a fairer analogy than, well,
I don't know, because I think I got to disagree with you a little bit. Like, if we're talking about golf, and I want to know who can take this ball from here and get it into that hole the fewest amount of times. I really, if that's as a golfer, are you a golfer, by the way?
No, that's just way too
me
long.
too. Me, as Mark Twain said, it's a good walk ruined. But for me, it's this idea of like, okay, but if I care about golfing, I want to know who can get that ball in the fewest amount of times in this course. That means something to me. Do I give a shit what they're wearing? No. Do I give a shit what they had for breakfast? No. Do I care if they rode or walked to each one? I don't, because I personally don't think that
Do I care that everyone is doing the thing the same way? Yes.
Is it?
If one person's riding and one person's walking, you're not doing it the same
Well,
way.
what if we offered everyone the ability to ride?
Well, that's a different argument. And it's one worth having for maybe a bunch of fucking pretentious
But
golfers.
are you in the belief system that two dudes are golfers and one walks, by the way, talk about athleticism, one walks from here to the end of the golf course, the other drives, and your belief system is that the benefit and energy saved from walking versus driving. Now, we don't go into what happens when his muscles stop and cool down and sit down versus
I do
the
believe,
person who keeps walking.
So I do believe, and again, I think this isn't the argument we want to have, but I do believe
Still kind
that.
of fun, though.
It is fun.
Yeah.
I do believe that. I think, what do they do, 36 holes a day? Or whatever, or the weekend. Those motherfuckers, it's a long walk, dude. It's a long walk. And listen, they're not the most, like John Daly
But
was
you really
fat
think it
and
affects
drunk.
it? True. Most golfers are fat and drunk. But do you think it really affects that I walk from here to there? Does it affect my swing, my aim, and my...
Let me rephrase it.
Go ahead.
If the guy who's expending more calories and more energy is tasked with doing the same thing as the guy who gets to save the calories and energy before endeavoring on the exact same task, wouldn't you think the person with more calories and energy would have an advantage, however slight it might be?
I guess I would say this. If we had two businesses...
Oh, what a cop-out, Russ.
Dude, I don't know if... I think we're talking about something different, JC, because let's say we have two businesses and they're both trying to get the same result. One pays more money, one doesn't. Does it really matter if they get the result or not? And you'd be like, yo, Russ, the bottom line, one makes a little more money than the other. And my point is, well, if the bottom line is the answer, or is the result the answer?
It matters that we're playing by the same set of standards. And in the business context, you're not. There's no governing body that says you only have $500 with which to run your ads.
Okay,
That's
let's
the
play
problem.
basketball, but you're taller than me. We're not playing against the same team. You're taller than me.
We're playing with different position.
But my point is, how do I, as a 5'10" dude, play someone who's 7 foot tall?
You don't. You're a shooting guard and that guy's a center.
He's still gonna wall at me.
No, he's playing in the paint and you're on the outside banging out threes.
How many 5'10" people are in the NBA?
Guido?
I would say that the exception to the rule in this situation only proves the rule that genetic ability of being taller and having a longer reach is that genetic ability is more important. Go ahead.
But you're both expending energy. You may be, so two golfers, one of them might be taller and have longer arms and be able to create more torque with his swing.
Sure.
But you're both playing by the same rules, doing the exact same thing, and you're not playing head to head against each other. When, in your scenario, the tall guy is providing an active defense to the short guy. In my scenario, neither is providing an active defense. The defense is the course. It's not active. It's a passive defense.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
Talk to me.
Someone wins, let's say basketball. Someone gets more points than the other team, but the other team shot more than them. The other team put more energy into the situation. The other team ran more. They had the ball more, but they lost. So we can look at, but before you jump in, we can look at the energy expenditure. We can look at all of the different processes that occurred. But when we talk about who won, we talk about who got more points.
Right. But we're also talking about the same group of 5 players on each team on the exact same court with the exact same regulations.
But they use different amounts of energy.
Right, but in the golf scenario, you're not playing under the same regulations. The regulations state that you've got to walk the course, and when someone doesn't, it's like letting.
Okay, so now no one in a wheelchair can play golf. That's what you're saying.
Why are you gonna do that to me,
dude? No, you earned that one.
No, it's this. It's that you're playing a game of basketball, and one team has the hoop at 10 feet, and the other team has it at 7 feet.
Okay, but that's okay. Now we're talking different things. Different goalposts are different than a different process. With golf, I don't think you have a good argument because it's hard to argue that the amount of energy put into walking or whatever plays out into how much it takes to aim and hit.
So I don't have personal experience playing golf, so I can't speak to it. I think it's fucking boring and pretentious.
Totally.
But let's talk about toxic masculinity.
Oh, okay. But just to punctuate, my point about
me already,
dude. My point about transgendered athletes is that transgendered individuals exist. They do. I believe they do. I believe intersex individuals exist, and how that plays out into your version of gender can really make more than just a binary version of man and female.
Let me put a bow on it.
Oh, thanks.
I think you should be able to fuck whoever you want to fuck, and I think you should be able to do whatever you want to do, and I think athletically you shouldn't be able to put anyone in a position where they're at increased risk because you want to play with a different group of people that's physically different. Unfair. And in that process, potentially take future opportunities and earning potential away from someone. And let's close that door and let's open the door to toxic masculinity, because you know that's one of my favorites.
I know it is. It really is. So here's my point is, when we come to this, and then by the way, I'm cool with your punctuation and bow on transgender. But,
and I don't mean to cut you off, but
dude, I totally get it.
We're going to be here all night.
No, I get it. Well, but this is a topic that you and I have wanted to talk about for a while, so I'm glad that we can talk about it. So number one, I believe that, so I enjoy masculinity. I'm a man. I enjoy being a man. And I like how this plays out into the world. I think that if we look at men in different cultures, we might see different versions of masculinity. So I could take like a Spanish man versus an American man versus an Irish guy. And they're all going to have aspects of them that might be similar of masculinity. And there's going to be aspects of them that are going to be a little different. And so, for instance, you could think of a stoic Irish guy who, like my dad, his mom died. What was that? Or like you. Thank you, stoic. But my dad, his mom died. He didn't even cry at her funeral.
So, but I understand that. For the purposes of this conversation, it's probably important to not discuss masculinity in other cultures, only because we haven't lived it, we haven't understood it.
But it's just to show you that it's not really determined by X and Y chromosomes, that culture plays a big piece into what we determine as masculine.
Correct.
Okay.
And what I think is, I think masculinity in Western culture, by its definition, is not toxic. I don't think there's such a thing.
Well, you said that without giving us definition. Why don't you go down that road first? Like, how would you define masculinity?
I would define masculinity as positive traits generally associated with individuals who identify as males in Western society.
So in some sense, I was...
Really caught me off guard on the definition.
It's okay, buddy. I'm glad to do that. I like catching people off guard. But I guess we could agree that in some sense that there's a role that you're saying that masculinity plays in society, and that role has a lot to do with how they've grown larger and stronger, and that plays out into how they... Go ahead.
I would say, I would stop you there because I think that it doesn't necessarily have to do with larger and stronger and actually being a masculinity is not only displayed by cisgendered men. Masculinity is something that can be
straight,
pansexual, pangender, pan all of that.
Okay.
And more so than do I have a definition for masculinity, I have a definition for toxic masculinity.
Wow.
I think the problem is in the past few years, toxic masculinity has become a catch-all explanation for sexism, misogyny, and negative parts of violence.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing toxic about two dudes mutually duking it out and trying to throw fives in a parking lot to settle a dispute. But I think that those things that initially fell under the definition of toxic masculinity, I would argue, are not masculine at all. Like, it's not masculine to be misogynist. It's not masculine to be a bully. Masculinity is standing up for the bully. Masculinity is standing up for, fidelity in a relationship or things like that. I think the things that have become called toxic masculinity are basically negative terms for things that people who are intimidated or dislike, certain behaviors will cast a giant umbrella because a man has displayed that behavior. Much like the other terms in society today have become kind of like one shot, one kill terms. Toxic masculinity, rapist, racist, sexist. Like, those things are killer terms. And I don't think...
To get looped together is pretty rough too.
All together, right. Yeah. So while I think there's being a dick and there's being masculine, I don't think toxic masculinity as a term is accurate.
Okay.
Toxic masculinity is just being a dick.
Oh, so I guess what I'm getting at is that there's aspects of being a man in culture that can bring on aggression, and that aggression sometimes can be helpful. And you and I have agreed upon that throughout the conversation, that maybe this has led to innovation, this has led to hard work.
How's it tied to masculinity?
Say again?
How is that tied to masculinity?
Aggression is masculine, I would say. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I mean, you go on Reddit, every other fucking video on fight porn is two chicks fighting.
Yeah, but that's just sexy. I'm just kidding. So I guess, more what I'm talking
You're
about...
You're about to get canceled.
I'm right there. No, more what I'm talking about is this idea of aggression. Maybe if you took it to the initial, think of even a sexual encounter. One person is kind of coming at another person, invading another person in some sense.
I feel like I'm fairly masculine.
I would agree with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And in most encounters, people are coming after me.
Dude, did I totally open myself up for that? I really
you really opened up.
Is that written in your notes? Did you have that? But
no, it's just
so although they may be attracted to you.
I'm just kidding, by the way.
I know, of course, I'm just going with it. But more what I meant by aggression is this idea that one is coming onto another. I don't want to go down that road either, but down this.
A forward advance.
Yeah, and that against another, or that the others, as you were saying earlier, will is almost being you're now submissive.
See, I look at it more as an advertisement. I'm presenting you an offer. You can take me up on an offer, or you can choose to go and get the other offer. This is
wonderful, because this now might be our division between toxic and not toxic. If I leave it as an offer, then I don't think it's toxic one bit, because it really does leave your choice and volition, or the other's volition, into the process. I think it becomes toxic when someone's volition doesn't matter.
But that's no longer masculine either. You've left the bucket of masculinity and you've gone into some other bucket.
Explain to me where. So, like, think of this. Like,
a man knows when he rolls up on a woman and he kicks it to her and she's not interested. He knows. Maybe it takes.
This is my point, though. Not all men do.
But they're not men. They're men in biology.
I need definitions.
But they're not masculine. Like a masculine.
So your true version.
Man.
Well, this is really, I think, this is where we butt heads.
He rolls up on a woman. He kicks it to her at the bar. Maybe she doesn't laugh at the first
But he's
joke.
honest. You're saying that he's true and honest with the situation.
Maybe he makes a second and third joke to try and see if maybe he could crack the veneer. And then at the third joke, he leaves. But the douchebag, the dickhead, the prick, the drunk,
you
the
think you're so
asshole,
fucking good, and
that's not masculine.
Well, that's my problem. Is that where did it switch off of masculinity? He sees a woman, he approaches her.
He didn't act like a man.
In what sense?
He acted like a man would say. He would walk away and say, "Hey, that one didn't work out." He would cut his losses.
Guido, how many rapes happen in this country a year?
But those aren't done by That's not masculine.
They're done by men.
Oh, so every man's masculine?
You tell me.
No.
On average, there are 433,648 victims.
Every man is not
500,000 victims a year. And I don't know if you can get this one because it might be a hard one, but how many are done by women versus men?
They're underreported. I can tell you that.
So even if we take that, but my point is that there are more men in jail for rape. There are more men in jail for
no argument, Russ. But that's not masculine behavior. That's sociopathy. That's psychopathy.
How do we separate though? Like, so here's my thing: is that it seems to me that you're saying, Russ, to a certain point, it's masculine, and then it gets to this point where it's too much. Now it's not masculine.
But why do we then have to? So let's attack it from the other direction. Okay. If someone's a jackass and goes and rapes someone, like, why do we now count that as toxic masculinity or whatever these things are that are toxic masculinity? Like, all right, let me pose the question.
He was aggressive. He was over aggressive. He didn't take any feedback from the other. It was about him and no one else. He was totally disconnected. He had zero connection to the person.
Took no feedback. That's where I draw the line.
But you and I talked about connection, right? And I said, on one side, we've got this woman who's so connected that she watches a commercial on TV and she cries because she's so overly connected that she feels emotions of others so easily. Then we got this dude who feels zero connection to other people. He's got no problem hurting and causing pain to that other person. She would just as much hurt herself as hurt as that other person.
But true masculinity is having both. True masculinity.
Well, now you're talking about a type of androgyny that says both high masculine and high feminine behavior.
Sure. I'm going to use my terms and you can use your terms.
No. You should use my terms.
You should use my terms.
Thank you.
I call it the sensitive meathead.
Oh, this is your show.
It's the sensitive meathead. But you should be able to go, and even if you can't disconnect yourself from the baby deer that you have to kill to feed your family, you should be able to do that. You should be able to be, when an enemy is at the gate, you should be able to defend your group of people. And at the same time, you should be able to go home and you should be able to intuit what your woman is feeling and thinking. Like, that's true masculinity.
But brother, this is where people disagree with you, that a lot of masculinity... Well, they are stupid. Well, there are a lot of stupid people, but I think a lot of people will say to you that a lot of men that can disconnect very well will struggle with connecting. And what you are saying is by the way, this is what I agree with, that a real man has both abilities, that he really can disconnect when it's time to kill the deer and feed his family, and that he can feel for his kid who's crying because they stubbed his toe. And now what I think is toxic masculinity is that if I have a 3-year-old kid who's crying, a 3-year-old boy who's crying, and I say, big boys don't cry. Come on, you stupid shit. Toughen up. Where 3-year-olds are supposed to cry.
Is that toxic masculinity or is that being an insensitive, goon?
Well, maybe both, because in some sense is that I think the person who's doing that is saying, I want to teach him to be a real male.
But let me ask you this. So you go to the 3-year-old and you say, big boys don't cry. What part of that is masculinity other than the fact that you have 2 balls and a cock?
Well, the fact that I didn't say big kids don't cry, big people don't cry, big humans don't cry, I said big boys don't cry. So I've linked it to gender. And I think that's the issue, is that when we link big boys don't cry, but big girls can cry, we say that girls are allowed to have emotions and boys are allowed not to. And so what I say is what's toxic is that older dude who's training this boy, because he says, to teach you to be a real man, you've got to be able to kill the deer and not have emotions. And what I'm saying is, but for a 3-year-old kid, he should really learn both. And he should learn how to know when to cry and feel sad when he lost somebody or when he's hurt. And then he knows how to disconnect if he has to fight or if he has to kill.
So we have a nomenclature issue. We have an issue with naming the behaviors. And my problem is that toxic masculinity is just a nomenclature issue, and it's become a catch-all for things that people don't like. For example, let me ask you this.
When I talk about feminism and I talk about power, I'm talking about that, my mom and my dad, my aunts, when they grew up as baby boomers, they could be a nurse or a teacher or a stay-at-home mom. They really didn't have a lot of opportunity. So there was a different set of power for women than there were for men. And now when we talk about what people are allowed to do, a lot of it has to depend on what amount of power they have. And men have much more power, I feel, in this culture, where they've got much more flexibility in what they can do than women can do.
Okay, so let me offer you 2 anecdotal pieces.
Well, first, you give me a response to that. Like, what do you think about when I talk about that? When I talk about feminism as power versus genitals?
Bro, honestly, I gotta tell you the truth. I gotta come clean here.
Thanks.
I don't think I really understand feminism.
Go ahead.
Like, as well as I should, because I feel like it's changed so much over the last handful of years that I don't really think I have a grasp on what feminism is.
Points to you. Yeah.
If we're talking about female empowerment and all these other things, like, I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too. That's my deal. That's my deal.
But when it transitions into this, like, hateful, like, if you've got hair on your chest and you're a man, like, we don't like you, like, I feel like that ventures.
But I agree with you too, sir. Like, I agree with this idea that we have to hate masculinity. I think that
I'm not saying that. I don't think we have to hate masculinity.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying, sir. Right. Maybe when you and I say that we should talk about the other side, let's talk about femininity. Tell me toxic femininity in your eyes.
Toxic femininity.
Maybe I can help you. Let's picture the woman who gets so worried all the time because she's so connected to everybody that she is constantly complaining and constantly breaking up our plans because she's so worried about this person over here.
See, again, like, I don't consider that to be toxic femininity. I just think that you're just a bitch.
Sorry. You got me off guard on that. Well, maybe the problem...
Or just like a less fun human, whatever.
Well, that is a less fun human. Guido fell over there. So here's my point. I don't know if we define femininity and masculinity enough that we can talk about what's toxic about it. I guess what I would say is that if we talk about masculinity, I'm going to say that there's aspects of being a man that's brought on by the physiological experience of being a man that interacts with my culture and my society in a way that defines me as a man.
Dude, you could, like, put that down on an exam in college and get
was that pretty good? Was that
pretty good?
But so now what I say, though, is that you and I can recognize that maybe some of those skills can go overboard. In the same way that I would say is that being a woman is going to have a similar situation where some of those skills can go overboard. So maybe you and I can look at mental illness. Let's look at someone who is autistic. We would say maybe this person is egregiously masculine, totally into themselves, disconnected. And now we've got someone with borderline personality, totally over-emotional. Just everything is about emotional dysregulation, and they're always losing their shit. I have someone who always keeps their shit, someone who always loses their shit. And so my point is in some situations, both of those are helpful.
But they're individual personality traits. You can't be like one's feminine and one's like, they have feminine and masculine traits, but toxic
we still
masculine.
haven't defined it, buddy.
And I don't think we're going to.
Well, how can we define toxic if we haven't defined what normal is? And that's the hard part. I think what you're saying is, Russ, I get upset when people point to aspects of being a man and they say that's bullshit or that's not helpful. And I say that's not true. Even if me and another dude are fighting the flagpole behind the schoolyard, that even though it seems violent and stupid, that it creates better men, that we now become more honest with each other. And after that, we'll shake hands after he breaks my nose. we'll shake hands and we'll move on. And there's benefit to this process where maybe a woman would be like, you guys stop fighting. This is crazy. You're stupid. You're idiots. And so what I would say is that you and I are arguing that, well, maybe you don't understand aspects of being a man that maybe on the outside look really bad, but you don't understand how they play out.
That's not my argument.
Go ahead.
My argument is aspects of being a man that from the outside look pretty bad probably are pretty bad, but you shouldn't call them masculinity just because they're enacted by someone who's got a cock and balls. Everything is not part of masculinity. Everything a guy with testosterone and a penis does is not part of masculinity. So masculinity is this other thing.
But brother,
it's above.
I'm with you. It transcends what you're saying in some sense.
Every man's not masculine.
Agreed. Let's go into a jail. I'm going to go into a jail. There's a female jail on one side of this hall, and there's a male jail on the other side. And now I look at the rape unit.
Yep.
The rape unit in the male jail is packed.
Right.
I got 6 and 7 guys per cell. I look over to the female unit for rape, barely anyone there.
Okay. Why? Is it because it's less reported, or is it because there's more coalescing?
Those could very well be. Those could very well be issues. But more, my point is: are we to say that their sex has nothing to do with it?
My point is because they're men, their actions do not fall under the umbrella term of masculinity. Masculinity is a positive thing.
But I hear you, brother. But I just don't think
it's a negative thing. It doesn't live in the same bucket.
Agreed. And I know that you're not pro-rape. Like, I know you.
Let's get that on record.
All right. That is on record. JC is anti-rape. What I'm saying is that it's hard for us to have a real discussion about what good or bad aspect of something if we haven't really defined the something. And I think what we struggle with is a definition of masculinity that encompasses these good qualities that we're talking about and excludes these others. And my point is that sometimes these good qualities can go too far. And if I don't have a good balance...
But when the good qualities go too far, they become bad qualities. And they're no longer in that group of behaviors.
Well, but think of it. Well, I mean, in some sense, yes. I mean, you and I are having pints and we're having a good time. But you and I both know that we can drink too much and now it becomes bad and we get sick and we become assholes. Right. So the behavior hasn't changed. You become sexier. I become a maestro. But I think the idea is that the behavior didn't change. How it affected us to change and how that effect played out into society changed. And that's what I feel with masculinity. Just like drinking, it can be very helpful and very good at a certain level. But if I exclude other aspects and just focus on these, I can get to a place where I overdo it, where I become difficult with other people.
Now you're no longer drinking, you're a drunk.
But my point is, it's the same behavior, though, doesn't it? JC, how do you separate the behavior? Because it isn't like I become something else by doing something else. I become something else by still drinking. So if I still do the behavior and I become something else, if you're like, yeah, well, Russ, now you started smoking, and now that behavior is because you're smoking. My point is that if the behavior, and by the way, do we see this everywhere? There's a U or an upside down U curve, a bell curve.
It's called a bell curve.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
I don't know if they teach you that in psychology.
Yeah. I also talk about the U curve or the bell curve. But the bell curve we start recognizing is that for the majority of these behaviors, you and I would recognize that they are pro-life, pure human, pro-relationship, pro-society. And then we can go to sides where they're not helpful for society. And then we can go to another side where they're super helpful for society. I think that masculinity behaviors, the majority can stay in this bell curve of very helpful and very good and creates good society. I think some behaviors can be super good for society, like going into a dojo, getting your ass handed to you.
So it seems like, again, it's about dosage. How much?
But not behavior. See, that's the difference. Water's good, but I can drown. A little bit of painkiller is good, but I can become addicted if I take too much. Right. So when you talk about dosage...
A little bit of approaching a girl at a bar is good, but staying there too long and hovering over her like a raven is not good. So now it's toxic.
A behavior that's gone too far.
Dosage.
So I think you and I are talking about a similar thing.
Russ, here's what we need to do.
Go ahead.
We need to...
We ran out of beer.
No, we're not running out of beer, but we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we are going to independently study the definitions of what's masculine in a good realm and toxic masculine in a negative realm, and we're going to do this
Part
again.
2.
We're going to do it again.
Guido, will you send me an email on this just because that's how I function. I need to see this because now we can get our ammunition. We can come to the gunfight with guns, and not knives and harsh words. But I think one of the things first off, thanks, man. This was tons of fun.
This is fucking awesome.
And also, you and I, we would start these conversations and fucking Toledo will get in the way and break it up and we never get to go any further.
That kid's toxic.
No, I love that kid. But but by the way, when we show some slides, I'm gonna have his picture under the toxic masculinity. But I think our point is that we've decided that it might be semantic, some of our discussion.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is but the other thing I'm gonna do, by the way, do you know Sci-Hub? SCIHUB. If you do like Google Scholar and do like a search for some psychology, and they just give you the abstract, you go to Sci-Hub with the DOI, and they'll give you the article. And so like I often go and I want to read like, you know, what did these researchers who said this, what did they really say?
Right.
And so what I want to do is kind of for you and I to be able to come together next time and say, okay, dude, give me your definition of masculinity.
Here's what we're going to do.
I'm going to give you mine.
We're going to go to Sci-Hub. Here's what we should do. We're going to trade articles. I'm going to give you a couple of articles from my perspective, and you'll give me a couple from yours. We'll read them, and then we'll come back and we'll chop it up again.
It's like you read my dream diary. This is exactly in it. With Guido, by the way. I put Guido in that too. But no, I think...
That sounds toxic.
He's with ads. He pushes us over the top.
Dr. Russ Kennedy, thanks for coming to my little
Professor JC,
here.
always
appreciate
a pleasure,
you, brother. This was awesome, and we're going to do it again.
Thanks, Professor.
That was awesome. If you're only going to do 3 things with your life this week, make sure you hit the subscribe button, do your push-ups, and drink your tequila. If you want to find Russ, check out the show notes. In the immortal words of Arnie Grape, thank you and goodbye.